This is my channel's monthly compendium for the month of February 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1453, written by Teddy Fluffy Cake Mix. When a hairdryer's cord defies logic. Hi everyone, I'm a bit of a skeptic, but I really can't figure out what happened. I feel I covered everything, but this still doesn't make sense. In our flat, I would dry my hair in the hall, as space-wise it made more sense, and I had a full-length mirror in there. I've always used the same hairdryer, never bought a new one. I'm someone with bangs, and a lot of bang wearers know that you have to style your bangs every day. So, I wash my fringe and then blow dry it with my hairdryer every single day. I am standing up while I dry my hair, not sitting down. Normally, one day I came out of the bathroom, grabbed my hairdryer, and noticed I couldn't stand drying my hair, as the cord was too short. I was confused as I've never moved that mirror and the socket is in the wall. Suddenly the cord was too short? When drying my hair I aimed from above. Suddenly that was impossible. I've tried everything to make it work, but eventually I bought a new hairdryer as this one was useless, as even when sitting in a small stool it would still be really hard to dry my hair. So the new hairdryer is the one I still use. The expensive nice old one is now in the drawer. I never was able to figure this one out. I don't get it. Bit of a lame glitch, I guess. But it's very recent, and even my boyfriend did not understand as he sees me dry my fringe every single day. It's not like a vague memory, this just happened, and I have absolutely no way of doing my hair anymore with this thing. Anyone have fun, logical explanations? Bonus file written by Timbuktian. The Mystery of the Empty Cabin. My family had a small cabin in the woods for spending weekends and holidays in. It was in a very deserted area in the countryside, and our only neighbor was a very old farmer who lived around 10 to 15 minutes walk away. The only other house was an abandoned old cabin that nobody had visited for decades. The owner died and the son never visited since. One weekend when I was about 14, I went to visit the cabin with my parents. My great aunt was there already, a few days earlier. She would go up there most weekends to enjoy the solitude and take care of the cabin. When we got there, she told us a very strange story. The local police got an emergency call from the cabin next door, the night before we arrived. But when the police finally got there, they found the cabin empty, except for a mug on the table with some water in it, and the phone lines had been cut. I remember this freaking me out, and I never wanted to go near that cabin again. My great aunt is a pretty serious person, so I can't imagine she would make such a thing up. Bonus file written by Complete Rip 1447, a priest, a scapular, and a family tragedy. When I was 14, I was attending a religious conference with my Catholic school peers. It was far away, halfway across the country, so the only people I knew were the other kids from my school. It was the kind of conference where you could walk around campus and hear different people speak, attend panels, go to events, etc., but no cell phones were allowed, so you were essentially cut off from the world for the week. I was walking back by myself in the evening when a priest I had never seen before stopped in front of me, grabbed my hands, and just gave me a good creepy stare down. For a solid 15 seconds, he stood in front of me and just stared. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me a scapular. Now, if you're not religious, this is a protective necklace type deal that is supposed to protect someone who is dying, give them peace, a sign of salvation, and a protection from danger. He put it in my hand, closed my fingers around it, and walked away. I was dumbfounded, but put it in my backpack and didn't think about it again for the rest of the week. Never saw that priest again. When my parents picked me up from the airport after the conference, I could immediately sense something was wrong. They were very quiet and reserved, and I could tell my mother had been crying. When we got to the car, they told me my grandfather had fallen off of his front porch steps while I was gone and was not recovering well. When I looked down at my backpack on the floor, I could see the scapular was in the side netting pocket right where I left it. He died within 24 hours of my return. Now, I'm actually not a religious person, and I don't think I've ever truly described the Catholic ideals I was taught, even as a kid. I was really just following the beliefs that were handed down to me. When other people talked about feeling God's presence, I never understood them, nor did I know what they meant, or had anything close to what they talked about experiencing when they prayed. but this experience is the only reason I cannot allow myself to be fully atheist. 13 years later, and I still cannot piece this moment together to make it make sense. The priest could not have known me. His name tag was from Montana. I looked for connections in my group, went through all the teachers and students who attended, and no one had a connection to any churches or priests in Montana. I don't believe in an almighty being up in the heavens deciding who gets eternal bliss and who suffers eternal damnation. But there has to be some kind of higher power. I don't know what it is, and I don't have any further explanation, but something was looking out for me that day. Case file number 1454, written by Androgynous Rain. From pizza into a triangle UFO. Saw an actual UFO. Not some fuzzy balloon in the sky, the real thing. This was in the 90s. Working late at a pizza joint, we close and the boss heads out back for a cigarette. He comes running in yelling for me to come see something a couple of minutes later, so I run out back. And there's this big triangle floating in the sky. It's drifting overhead at walking speed, and it's absolutely, completely silent, eerily so. One blue light on each corner, no engines or sound at all. I should probably mention that my dad is a pilot, and I grew up at air shows. I'd seen all kinds of aircrafts, F-17s and B-12s in flight at close range. This wasn't any of those things. It wasn't a plane. Planes don't float by and stop motionless in midair a couple 100 feet up with no sounds. This thing did. My boss was kind of freaked out. So this triangle just leisurely drifts over us and then stops. Just hangs in the air motionless. You could have heard a pin drop. 2 minutes go by. Then, with no change in orientation, this thing shoots up vertically about 10,000 feet in the blink of an eye, not so much as a noise. Then it accelerates faster than anything I've ever seen in the sky, far faster than an aircraft breaking the sound barrier, and flashes into warp or whatever the frick and vanishes. Holy crap, did we actually just see that? My boss exclaimed. Yes we did. And so did about 80 other people in town who called it in. Whatever it was, it didn't move, act, or sound like any airplane I've ever seen. Case file number 1455, written by Barbara Gnarly. The Unexplained Folded Fleeced Freakout. It's the middle of fall, about 9 at night, a calm but crisp evening where you can see your breath. I live in an apartment complex, and it's time to take my little 11-pound terrier for his last walk of the night. I put his harness on, his coat on. It's basically a cylinder open on both ends for the neck and hips, an extra hole for front legs, and another very small hole around the shoulder blades for the harness clip to poke through, and it velcros across the tummy and chest, and clip his leash onto the harness. We go downstairs, and just outside the side exit is what used to be a tennis court, but now it's just grass and everyone uses it as a doggy area. The fence is still up and it's about 10 feet high, completely enclosing the area. The entrance is in the center of the closed long side. We get in, I close the gate, and my dog walks counterclockwise. I'm still holding his leash because it's dark out and he's dark, and along the far side there are branches from outside the fence that poke through, and sometimes he'll just lay down under some of them. So we walk half the distance close to lengthway, we walk the right short side, we walk the back long side with the branches. We walk the left short side, he's doing the perimeter tonight. So there are trees further away on the outside of this left side as well, and beyond those trees is the street. The streetlights are about 40 feet away, and the trees block most of the light, but a few streaks do reach the inside of the tennis court. We get to the close left corner, and the light is hitting something brown with woolly fluff on it. I look a bit closer. Hey bud, that looks just like your jacket. I look at my dog. He's not wearing his jacket? What? I look closer in the grass. It's his jacket, neatly folded in half. I know this isn't crazy spectacular, but this is easily the single most confusing moment of my life. For a few minutes afterwards, I felt queasy, like I was going to throw up because I couldn't process what just happened. How did his jacket get outside the fence? And folded. Bonus file written by Approaching 77, The Supernatural Cocoa Plantation. When I was around 11 years old in the countryside, we went bird hunting often. One day, as I was preparing to go with an older friend, we were collecting marbles around the house. There's this tall tree stump standing in the cocoa plantation surrounding the house. about 150 feet away. It stood slightly higher than the cocoa trees and used to be home to many birds who made nests in it. The crown had broken off and it stood dead from the middle of the trunk to the root. We were having small talk as we gathered marbles. I stopped picking some marbles when he stopped responding to me. I stood up to see if he was there. Suddenly, a human-like face with very bright light, radiating all around it, sat on the stump that was staring directly at me. I shivered and got frozen. I fully understood what I was seeing and was very much afraid. However, I could not take a step away from where I stood. He was already caught up in it, that's why he wasn't responding to me. This whole thing lasted about 30 seconds. When I regained control of my body, I turned around to see if there was anyone and saw no one. When I turned back to look at it, whatever was there was gone. There was no sign of it ever being there. I know I was not hallucinating because the other guy was staring back just as I was, and I seemed frozen too. He stood a few feet to my right and ahead of me, so I could see him while I was staring at the face. He regained control exactly when I did. We were both terrified afterwards. He looked at me with confusion on his face while I stared back, hoping he would provide some explanation since he was older. He said nothing and I said nothing too. We both dropped the marbles we'd collected, went back inside, and never spoke about it between us or to anyone. There's no way anyone would hear this story and not call us crazy. Besides, both of us were too confused and terrified at the same time, we couldn't discuss it. Case file number 1456, written by ADHD Cowboy. An EMT's dream leads to a real-life crisis. I don't know how I'm still alive. I've had quite a few close calls and brushes with death. Don't know if I'm lucky or God wants me around for a while longer. But more on the point of the question, when I was 19, I was fresh out of a job training for the National Guard. Following this, I took a class to get my EMT license in the downtime I had before starting college. I was asleep and having a dream. Side note, I'd been having a lot of dreams and nightmares at the time. This dream was me and my partner going to a guy's shop, and about all I remember is leaving and thinking, man, I hope that guy will be okay. Then boom. Big as hell explosion that sounded a little too realistic, and thus realizing I'm in a dream, I wake myself up to look at my watch. 4:30 a.m. on the dot, grab a gun, and run out to the living room. My dad is still sound asleep. And I wake him up asking if he heard an explosion, thinking maybe a neighbor's farming equipment blew up or something. He says no. I go outside and don't see anything burning or a glow from anything burning, so I go back to my bed thinking it was a surreal dream. Later that day, I visited my mom at work and she told me that a body shop in a town 30 miles away from the house blew up when the owner lit the propane heater and he was pretty messed up. Perplexed, I asked what time it happened, and she says it was 4:30 that morning. I'm floored because there's no way I should have heard that from that far away, 30 miles, especially not when my dad didn't hear it as well. He sleeps lighter than I do. I still wonder about that to this day, and I've asked a lot of people about their opinions, and no one has a good guess beyond coincidence. The second story. I used to work at a hospital doing security work, and one day in rounding in the newest part of the hospital on the top floor or roof, maintenance stuff and AC units, was up there with my friend and coworker, and we both heard a cat meowing. Wasn't my friend as we were next to each other, and we heard it a good ways down the hall. There's definitely no one else around and no way for a cat to get up there to my knowledge. Never found it, but we weren't the last ones to hear it. Case file number 1457, written by Inanto Arielana, Vanishing in the Mountains. I live deep in the mountain countryside, so activity was low. Small town. The area has massive field mountain walking paths and a few road and walking paths around a small train station, a metal factory, and the tiny town where I lived. I was walking alone in the fields for a day walk, and I passed by two women. The directions we were walking in are theoretically impossible to come back around to in time to cross each other quickly. So I enter a concrete walk path, no one even around, by the factory 3 minutes in, and who do I see? The same woman. Both of them. I casually said hello, but then it clicked. I've seen them before. I turned and they were gone around the corner, but damn it, I've never turned so fast in my life. Never saw those women again, never. In the few years I've lived there, I've seen them only that day. I went out for walks every single day, so I had a good probability of seeing them again, and yet I never did. Never spoke of it until here. This wasn't at night, this was in clear daylight. Case file number 1458, written by D615, The Mysterious Lady in a Luxe Boutique. I live in the USA. My sister and mother were in my home country. My mother passed away and my sister went to this new Luxe department store to buy some mourning clothes. Now, my sister is extremely particular about shirts and tops and only likes the ones my mom used to buy for her 35 years ago on overseas trips. My sister asked the sales staff whether they have any tops in a specific color. Then, a customer my sister had never seen before, someone who looked just like a younger version of my mom, had suddenly appeared in my sister's side, reached out into the racks and pulled out 2 tops in the exact color, fabric, and size my sister likes. Then she said something that my mom always used to tell my sister when getting ready for an event. My sister described this customer to me as looking like a younger version of my mom with a 50s hairdo we've only seen in photos. My sister and I were born in the 60s, when my mom had longer hair, which she put up into a beehive do. By this time, I was on my way back to my home country. After the funeral, I visited the shop once my sister and once by myself, and could not find tops like that. They usually have items in multiple sizes. When I went with my sister, she insisted we could leave from the service elevator in the back. I was just as insistent that we couldn't because of high security. She told me that the lady who had helped her left from the back entrance. When I went there by myself, I spoke with the manager, who called the 5 sales clerks to help find another of the tops. I even showed them a photo of my sister in one of the tops that she had bought only a few days ago, but none of them remembered having the item. Summary. A lady who looked and spoke like a younger version of my mom found the exact kind of clothing item my mom used to buy her on overseas trips 35 years ago for my sister in her exact size and had seemingly vanished through an extremely high security area. So this stranger, who looked just like a younger version of my mom, down to her 1950s hairdo style we've only seen in photos, reached into the racks of a Luxe contemporary department store and pulled out 2 tops that fit my notoriously hard-to-please sister perfectly. And no, it's not a resurgent style because there were no other items like that around. Case file number 1459, written by C. Jane Go, The Mind-Blowing Cat Conspiracy. Last night after dinner, my partner, I'll call him H, went back into the kitchen for something and observed Luna, our black cat, sitting on the little red stool that I put in the kitchen in front of the French doors a few days ago, so the cats can look out. We have red curtains flanking those doors, and the curtains were pulled closed, providing a contrasting backdrop for Luna, who was on the stool. He said, "Luna is on the stool, and he shows up well with the red curtains behind him. I'm always talking about how I can't take good photos of Luna because he's black, and you can never see him well." It was just a passing comment, and I made a mental note to take a photo of him sometime in that spot. So H comes back to join me on the sofa. We chat for about 10 to 15 minutes or so, and he gets up to go back to the kitchen. He said, "Luna's still in here on the stool." I told him that it was weird that he'd just be hanging out by himself in a dark, closed-off kitchen. Normally, he'd be with us wherever we are. It wasn't like he had anything to look at outside. The curtains were closed due to the cold drafts. I tried to reason out that weird behavior, but cats do weird things, so I didn't think much of it. I told H that he's probably just waiting for a treat. I had been giving the cats treats every night for the last 3 nights or so that kinda made sense. As H was leaving the kitchen, he tried calling for Luna to come out, but he didn't. I tried calling too, from the sofa. By the way, you can't see the kitchen door and stool where Luna was from our sofa in the living room. As H was walking out of the kitchen and through the dining room towards the sofa again, we were talking about how Luna knows the words treat and that I have to spell it out so he doesn't get worked up. He suggested that I call out that I have a treat so that maybe he'd come out of the dark kitchen and join us in the living room. I told him that if I did that, he'd have to actually get up and go get a treat from the kitchen when he came out. I was being lazy. But ultimately, we decided to test the little experiment. By this time, H had joined me back on the sofa. There is a chair next to the sofa where our blonde cat, Soul, was snoozing away on a cozy black blanket through all of this. I noted that I wasn't sure if Saul knew the word treat as well as Luna, and said that it would be interesting to see how Saul responds. I start saying at first in a softer voice, "Anybody want a treat?" Still no Luna emerging from the kitchen, so I said it again a little louder. We looked over at Saul, and he was slowly opening up his sleepy little eyes, but still no Luna. I said it again 2 or 3 times, and all the while we were glancing between Saul and towards the dark kitchen entry, watching to see if Luna would come out. And then, when I was looking at Saul, whose head was completely raised at this point, I see right beside him another pair of green eyes, and quickly realize, we actually both realized at the same time, that Luna was curled up on the chair with Saul. And when I say curled up, it was like kind of curled up they're in when cats are in total relaxation or nap mode. I'm not sure about other people who have cat siblings, but with my cats, if they end up napping together, it usually starts with one cat already asleep, usually Saul. Then the other will jump up on them and start cleaning them, licking their ears and faces. Then 1 or 2 things will happen. They either start to play fight until it turns serious-ish, in which case I have to scold them because usually the napping cat just isn't in the mood to play fight, or on rare occasions, the imposing cat just cleans his brother and then curls up and sleeps right next to him. It is never just a cat jumps up on the other and just goes to sleep or in chill mode. It's always a process. I know because I always have to keep an eye on them when one jumps on the other in case one, usually Luna, starts bullying the other, biting too hard and so on. So this means at some point between H leaving the kitchen the second time, when H observed Luna still on the stool, and coming to the sofa, Luna would have to have had darted out really quickly without us noticing and then ran straight to the chair his brother was in, all within full view of where we both were, and settled down right away without waking his brother up. That is just not the way Luna operates. He doesn't dart through the house unless on rare occasions he's playing with his brother and they have the zoomies. Otherwise, Luna lumbers. He's a lumberjack. That's why his nickname is Luna Bear. He looks and lumbers like a small black bear. And what's more, I had called out, "Anybody want a treat?" and "treat, treat," several times. Ordinarily, when treat time is announced, he always comes running into the room. Always the kitchen, except for last night when we were trying to lure him from the kitchen. Meowing like crazy and acting like he's dying or going through a withdrawal and just needs a hit of that life-saving cat treat. It's a running joke that the food and treats are one of the rare things that he'll actually run up for. But he was just sitting there on the chair curled up next to his brother looking at me like, "What are you going on about?" We are so baffled. H and I looked at each other like, what the hell just happened? He immediately went back to the kitchen where he just was, and there was no Luna on the stool, because Luna was apparently on the chair next to us. I don't even know, but damn. Case file number 1460, written by Boobly Skunk Nugget, the songbird that saved my soul. When I was in my late teens, my father ended his life. One of the things I best remember him for was his enormous love for birds, especially those small songbirds. He had loved them since he was a child. His favorite sound was birds singing, and even one of his favorite songs was about a small bird, specifically about a young girl asking the bird to send a forget-me-not flower to her father up in heaven. I have always struggled with mental health issues, and although he struggled a lot himself, on my bad days, he would always sit by my side, just sitting silently next to me to support me the best way he was able to, until I managed to calm back down. After my father's death, my mental health plummeted, to the point where I no longer had any will to live. I was sent to a mental institution to be watched over. The thing about these rooms is that the only window that is openable is a teensy tiny window, and when opened, it's barely even big enough to fit your hand through on its own. But all the windows had bars in front of them, including a bar going in front of the tiny one, making the opening even smaller. During the stay, I got really bad. I was lying on the bed, crying, forming a plan of how I would finally get peace, when I saw a shadow. I looked up only to see on the back of my chair a little songbird looking at me. It just stood there, looked around the room a little, and then looked at me again. I managed to calm down and breathe, and when I felt better, I had to take a picture of it because I was wondering if I had lost my mind. After I took the picture and checked it out, when I looked back up, the bird was gone. I am not a religious or spiritual person, but that encounter felt too specific to be a normal coincidence, although that is probably what it is, thinking about it logically. Still, to this day, whenever I have anxiety or feel depressed, I think about that bird, and it helps me feel calm again. Bonus file written by Duad4408. Demon faces the fury of our fearless Rottweiler spirit. My wife and I had a huge Rottweiler we raised from a puppy when we started dating. He was a huge butthole, fiercely protective over both of us, especially my wife, and very picky about who he was friends with. Definitely our fault. He was an under-socialized COVID child, and we didn't have very many friends at our jobs or otherwise. He did love us more than anything on earth, and was the most loyal dog we could have asked for. I used to joke with my wife that if someone dared to break into the house in the middle of the night, they wouldn't have made it past the living room with all their limbs. Our dog died at 2 years old, from random heat exhaustion. Took him for the same 20-minute walk we did every day. He never made it home. My wife and I were shocked and devastated, especially her. We wasted no time getting another puppy with the house being so quiet. Once again, a little German Rottweiler. The two dogs couldn't have been more different. While protective, our current dog is the friendliest little bastard you could ask for. We made an effort to not repeat the same mistakes we did with the first pup, and got him very well socialized and adapted at a very young age. Fast forward to last night. I am a long-time sufferer of sleep paralysis. I've seen every demon possible in my room at some point in my life. The infamous Hat Man. He stands in the corner and smiles, sometimes reaches out and touches my legs on the bed. Having been through this so many times, I've gotten pretty decent at snapping out of it, albeit with some good effort. Last night was a lot different. It started off with him in the corner as usual. I started doing my usual strategies, wiggle my toes, say a prayer, etc. But nothing snaps me out of it. Eventually, the Hat Man gets on all fours and shuffles on top of me from the corner. At this point, I'm completely overcome with terror. I've never seen him this close before. His face is a few feet from mine, his black cartoonish eyes staring into me with his dark toothless grin unwavering. I repeat my strategies, trying to break out to no avail. Suddenly, piercing through the low humming noises, I hear a very deep guttural growl coming from next to me where my wife is sleeping. I use all the effort I can to wiggle my eyes in that direction. Standing over my wife, looking dead at my demon, is the angriest looking Rottweiler I have ever seen. Teeth are bared, hackles up, letting loose a furious snarl. I thought maybe it was my current dog and that I have perhaps managed to snap out of the paralysis until I saw the docked tail. The current dog has a full tail. The old one didn't. The dog launched itself into the demon still on top of me, staring into my soul, which somehow woke me up finally. I immediately teared up and went to the closet where we still kept his favorite stuffed animal. The only one he never destroyed, and just sat there holding it for a while, thanking my mean, nasty, fiercely loyal baby boy for continuing to protect us late into the night in this life and the next. Case file number 1461, written by Anonymous. The Cryptozoological Anomaly. When I was 8 years old, I was riding with my mom and we were on our way to see my grandma and grandpa. We were on a rural road that runs through the deep woods. We were going along and all of a sudden, we saw a very large black cat. It had a huge head and after looking it up, it was a black jaguar. My mom and I both saw this thing and told others what we had seen. Everyone told us we were crazy. I told a fish and wildlife biologist what I saw and they said they don't exist in the state or this part of the country. Fast forward 20 years, I was living in another state hundreds of miles away. I was archery deer hunting a piece of property that sat across the street from my house. It was a cold November morning. I was about 30 feet up a hackberry tree in a climbing deer stand, hunting about 70 yards from the edge of the property line, and where a fence line separated the property from a cow pasture. I got in the stand before dark and hadn't seen anything all morning except squirrels when something caught the corner of my eye. I looked over and saw a big black cat walking along the fence line. It had a very long tail. It was different from the large cat that I had seen over 20 years earlier. There was thick cover between me and lots of hardwoods covered in green briar, but I could see it clear as day. It was very slinky in the way it moved and it knew that I was there because it kept looking in my direction as it walked. It disappeared in a few seconds, and I never saw it again. I got down out of my stand and pulled my pistol out to walk out of the woods. It was scary to think about all the times that I had walked in the pitch black. Not being an expert in big cats, I've seen many bobcats in my life, and I've had lots of house cats over the years. I began to research the cat I had seen. It definitely wasn't a jaguar and wasn't a mountain lion. I found pictures online of black leopards. The cat that I saw was solid black. It didn't have spots. You could tell that it was a juvenile. It wasn't fully grown. It looked young. Once again, I got the line well. We don't have those here. The strange thing was I had several half-wild cats that lived in a barn on my property. My wife and I fed them and they would come up and we would pet them, but they would freak out if we brought them into the house. So they lived in the barn. One cat was really sweet. She would follow me around the property, and wherever I was, she would be within a few feet of me and just watch me. A few weeks before I saw that cat, she disappeared, which was strange. She was always around. I waited for days and weeks and I never saw her again. I believe that big cat got my outside cats. Case file number 1462, written by Nervous Elk 7053. My reincarnated skirt. A couple years ago, I was helping my mom clean out her closet and donate some of her clothes. We came across a jean skirt she used to wear a lot, but hadn't reached for in quite some time. She was hesitant to give it away, but I reminded her she hasn't worn it in a while. It's not in style right now. Maybe it's time to part ways with it. Note that we both remembered this conversation and decided to give away the skirt. Since then, jean skirts have come back in style, and we've had many conversations about how we regret our decision to get rid of the skirt. Well, this Saturday morning, I got a message from my mother that while she was looking through her closet getting dressed for a funeral, bam, there is the skirt we both so dearly missed was just right there in front of her, and she sent me a picture. We had gone through her closet multiple times in the past years since we got rid of it, looked through the spot where it showed up, and both of us swear it was never there. But now I guess the universe heard our disappointment and has returned the skirt back to us. So wild. Bonus file written by Icarus212521. The Midnight Visitor. I was 14 years old when I had one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. My bed faced a set of cupboards in front of me. The cupboards were old and designed in a way they didn't close properly. Instead, the inside of the cupboard had a magnet and the doors had a small piece of metal. Without either of those pieces, the door would remain slightly open. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt a heavy feeling on top of my legs. I opened my eyes and saw a black shape that kind of looked like an animal, but was about the size of a child crouched on top of my bed. It was just sitting there, looking down on the bed. I couldn't move until it started moving itself. I screamed and pulled myself up, grabbing and shoving the thing off my bed, and I ran out of it just about in tears. My parents searched my room. Nothing. My parents said I had a nightmare, and I was inclined to believe them. The next morning, I got up for school. As I went to get dressed, I noticed my cupboard was slightly open. When I took a look at it, I found the metal on the door had come off. There was no indication that there had been an issue before, and I know I didn't touch the cupboard. My parents insisted I must have hit it, as they said they heard a bang as well. However, the cupboard was at the foot of my bed while the door is up to the sides. No object was found that could have hit it. No follow-up incident ever happened, and I never got an explanation. Case file number 1463, written by IndieGamer363. An encounter with the Top Hat Man. When I lived in an apartment building on the ground floor back in 2020-2021, I kept catching glimpses of what I would call the Top Hat Man. It started with corner of my eye glimpses that made me just kinda confused more than anything. Girlfriend at the time knew and never questioned me on it. Even would sometimes ask if I'd seen anything when it seemed weird. Then one night, walking through the living room with dinner, I looked up and through the back sliding door blinds that were closed, I saw a clear as day dark shadow. It was clearly outside, so it would be like the blinds being the backdrop, the figure in the middle and a light shining from the street. It moved super slow and deliberately past my window like it wanted me to see it. Perfect silhouette, looked like a suit with a suit jacket with one of those longer tails, and a top hat. That one really freaked me out, almost like, here I am. You have been seeing me. that definitely messed with me for a bit. I always had this feeling of something circling our home, but never able to actually get in. Something definitely not good, but never able to do more than appear occasionally. But we never had any paranormal moments inside the home. The classic super intense stares into the living room for what felt like 10 or 15 minutes plus. Sometimes from our animals with the occasional fluffy backs like they were about to pounce. I am religious, but I usually kept it to myself. But I always made sure to pray over the rooms in any new home we moved into. Not sure if I pushed something out in doing so. The last time I ever saw him was walking to my car at midday. As I turned to move towards the car, I saw a figure sitting on a bench. As I looked up, I saw a man in an older black suit, arms resting on his upper legs, and a top hat. As soon as I realized what I was seeing, I snapped my head fully over and it was gone. It was at that moment I realized I'd never actually seen his face, that time included, but always could picture it whenever I thought of him or saw him. Looked up and my girlfriend was just staring at me. Asked if she saw it and she said no, but could tell I had definitely seen something. But he never popped up again. Not sure if my mind was feeding into a story or if something really was there, but definitely weird. Case file number 1464, written by Flaming Knife P. A UFO's gyroscopic dance. I saw a UFO/UAP. This was sometime in the late 90s at my parents' house in Portland, Oregon. I was outside in my parents' backyard, probably around 13 years old or so, and looked up and saw this smooth metallic disc that was tumbling through the sky. I wanted to run and get my mom's camera, but I knew I didn't have enough time, so I just stood there and watched it fly over the house and then head out of sight. My logical brain tells me that it was a mylar balloon of some sort, except it wasn't a balloon. From my angle, it was about the size of a dime or nickel, held up at arm's length. It didn't have any of the puckering you'd expect to see. There was nothing on the outside, and it wasn't really drifting so much as flying. All of its movements were 100% smooth. From the speed it was going at to the tumbling motion it was making, it almost looked like the way a gyroscope moves. I'm a pretty diehard skeptic, and I've spent a lot of time researching weather balloons and various other things that might use gyroscopic stabilization, but everything is a strikeout. I can't find anything that comes close. As much as I want to rationalize that it was a balloon, I know what I saw, or what I didn't see, as the case may be. I got a really good look at it, but it just doesn't make any sense. Case file number 1465, written by Past Independence 59. Overnight, my expensive contacts spawned a twin. For some background, I am 17 and live in Germany. I have very bad eyes, minus 16 in both eyes, so I'm blind without my glasses or contact lenses. I also wear very expensive glasses or contact lenses because they are a new special type which are supposed to stop my eyes from getting worse too fast. I noticed this on multiple occasions and it's so scary and weird, so I have 2 glass contact lenses, one for each eye, so a pair, and I only have those 2 because they are very expensive, 500 euros a pair. While on vacation, I was taking out my contacts and accidentally dropped one on the floor. I went to pick it up and clean it, and then put both my contacts away. I woke up the next morning to find one singular contact with my eye prescription. Like I said, literally minus 16, extremely rare, and I've never met anyone with that high of a prescription other than myself, laying on my bed. I freaked out, obviously, because they are expensive, and I thought I had somehow dropped it there last night and forgot to put it away. But I had slept in my bed the entire night, and when I checked my contact case, both of my contacts were in the case. Now I just, by some chance, had a 3rd glass hard contact lens with even the same serial number spawn on the bed while I was sleeping, in perfect condition, which is even more unlikely since I toss and turn a lot in my sleep. I 100% would have broken it. Why does this happen? How? I got freaked out and threw it away because there are only around 5 pairs of the special type of contact lens I own in all of Germany, since they are still in testing, and I don't understand how this is possible. Things like this happen very frequently, too. Eating the last apple to turn around and see the apple I had eaten previously on my nightstand. My fake nail breaking, throwing away the broken nail, and then realizing my nail never broke, meaning I now had an exact duplicate of my fake nail. Things like this, it is very, very creepy. Please, can anyone help me and let me know if this has happened to you too? I'm dead but not kidding. It is very creepy. Case file number 1466, written by Beneficial Agent 4000. 29 crickets lost in a parallel universe. My son and I always watch stuff around glitches, and he, 10 male, will always ask me, 32 female, if I've ever experienced a glitch before, which I never had until now. My son had a bearded dragon, so I have to buy crickets a few times a week. I went to the pet store I always go to and got 30 small crickets. I watched the woman count them as she was dropping them into the bag. The bag is also blown up and not flat like a Ziploc bag would be. I get to my car, which is maybe 20 feet away, and realize there's only 4 crickets. I immediately think there's a hole and they've escaped, as this has been my fear since we got the beardy. But nope, no crickets anywhere and no hole in the bag. I know I saw her put 30 in, but figured I was remembering wrong. So I went back in and told her there were only 4 crickets, and her face drops. She says, "Actually, there's only 1 cricket in here." At that point, I knew I wasn't crazy. I clearly remember counting 4. She looked at me with a terrified look and said, "I know I put 30 in here. You saw me, right?" She even went as far as to fill the bag with water to see if there were any micro holes that they could have gotten through. There was nothing. We both looked at each other for a few seconds with a mix of fear, confusion, and debating our own sanity. These crickets are small, but still like half an inch. They're by no means microscopic crickets or anything. I told my boyfriend there's 29 crickets stuck in another dimension. Case file number 1467, written by Dave Hayes Music. The Melody of a Goodbye. My father had cancer and was in hospice at my home. The bed was set up in the living room in front of the TV, which was one of his favorite places. The bed was next to a wall, which had our kitchen on the other side. I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom most of the night and was showing her a bunch of songs. This was a common occurrence for me because I love music and always love showing people songs. A few minutes before midnight, I heard a noise come from the living room. I don't even know what I heard exactly, but I immediately paused the music and walked into the living room followed by my mom. We immediately saw his breath was slowing, and a few minutes later, he was gone. A half hour later or so, I realized that the song that was playing when all this happened was "Say Hello to Heaven" by Temple of a Dog. A while after that, my mom turned on the radio and the beginning of a chorus of "Before You Go" by Louis Capaldi was playing, which my mom turned off maybe 20 seconds later. Was all this coincidental? Likely, but maybe my dad was saying goodbye through music, knowing how powerful of a message it would be to my musician self. Case file number 1468, written by Chels182. That's not Venus. Couple nights ago, my boyfriend and I were visiting my mom. He goes outside to start the car while I get some stuff together to bring with us. He rushes back in and tells me there's an orange thing outside and it's moving. That's his code for one of the weird orange spherical blobs in the sky he's had a couple encounters with. So I go out to look and it's in the distance. Looks stationary. I use my Sky Guide app and it says it could be Venus, but that didn't make any sense. It was just a little off from where I was pointing, and Venus would have been below our horizon line. Venus is also usually bright white, and planets don't twinkle. This thing was twinkling like crazy, and going from orange to red to white, getting bigger and smaller and brighter and dimmer. We're watching it go crazy until it finally gets big and bright, shrinks down to a little white dot, and blinks out. We waited there stunned for it to come back, thinking a passing cloud blocked it out or something. It never came back. No other star or celestial body around it disappeared, just that one. He showed me pictures he took before I came out, and the thing definitely covered some ground before I came out to look at it. This is rather minor on the weird scale for what I've seen, but it happened right before our eyes. Him and I have seen a lot of weird crap together as well, especially in the skies. Case file number 1469, written by Reddit user 112234. The House That Ate My Phone. When I was still living with my parents, my then boyfriend, now husband, and I were watching my 2-year-old nephew at the house. Me and my nephew were watching TV upstairs, and my boyfriend went to the bathroom quickly while I went down to grab something and threw my phone onto the bed. I remember it landing exactly in the middle and thinking, nice. I went back upstairs and decided to just leave my phone because I wasn't on it a lot at that point. After less than 2 minutes, I went back downstairs saying there's no way I can be without my phone for that long. When I got downstairs, I discovered it was gone. My boyfriend and I tore that room apart that day. I even looked between the mattress and bed frame and under the bed, thinking maybe it glitched through the bed. Of course, people said maybe my nephew took it, but he was upstairs the whole time, and remember, it was barely 2 minutes. We also didn't hear anything to point to someone stealing it, though it's high in that neighborhood. Throughout the years of my parents living there, I tore that room apart every chance I could. I looked behind a dresser and a bookshelf, under the bed, all over the closet, and found nothing. The day my parents moved out, I was pulling out random bags that were stored in an alcove above the closet, when all the way in the back, under a trash bag of clothes, and about 5 bags in, I found the case for the phone I lost. We searched that alcove and the other one every single time we destroyed the room looking for it. I never got that phone back, and we searched every nook and cranny of that house the day we emptied out that house to move out. This is just one of our many things that have disappeared, and the only one to not return after a while. It's also the creepiest thing to ever happen to me in that house. Case file number 1470, written by Human Cell 3158. We stumbled into a town that doesn't exist. This happened in 2016. I have an ex-boyfriend, and while we were together, we liked to just listen to music and drive around, discovering new places. We turned into this neighborhood one evening. It was early summer, late spring, around 5 or 6. Still a bit of light outside and fairly warm. On these excursions, I'd usually be using my GPS on my phone. Once we turned into this neighborhood, things got very strange and unusual. What we first noticed is that there is no one outside. No one bringing in groceries from the car or coming home from work. No cars on the road driving, even on all the streets we looked and drove down. No children out playing or riding bikes. We mentioned this to each other, and we began to look a bit harder. Next, we noticed there's nobody in any of the homes, no lights on in any of the houses, as many of them had big front room windows you could look into. But they were all furnished and had cars in the driveway like people did live there. We began to get very weirded out. I'm trying to route us out of that neighborhood, but my GPS is completely not working. It's showing us driving down roads we weren't even on, turns where there weren't supposed to be any, etc. It's like we were going in circles, even though we kept trying to go down different streets to find the main road. Nope, nothing but eerie, empty houses. I think now that we were stuck in some sort of strange loop. It was reminiscent of a fake neighborhood used to test nuclear missiles on. But this was in the middle of Fairfax, Virginia, where there surely would be no nuclear missile test neighborhoods, right? We both start to panic at this point. Like, where the hell are we, and why isn't the GPS working? I've always been very good with computers and phones, am majoring in IT now, and was no stranger to my Google Maps app. We finally found this one road that looked like it led out of the neighborhood. We took it, as it was different from the others. What we discovered next shook us to our bones. It was a dirt road, unlike the others. After driving down it for a moment, we realized it led into a heavily wooded area. It was nightfall at this point, and we had been trying to find our way out for at least 20 to 25 minutes. We have no music on, as I had it paused so I could concentrate more on the GPS. We are driving down this road and see a huge house to the right. One light was on inside, what appeared to be the upper level mid-room. You could see light through the window, and a black figure standing there. We are so spooked out at this point. The figure wasn't moving, like it was just watching. We are driving slow because we both just can't understand what's going on and are looking up into the window. What the hell is that? Then, so quickly, and out of nowhere, this white pickup truck begins tailing us fast. Way too fast to simply just be driving behind somebody on a dirt road, at least 50 miles per hour. I'm not crapping you when I say it chased us out of there. My ex is driving, hunched over the wheel while simultaneously looking out his rearview mirror at the truck. I have my back turned looking out the back car window. You could cut the tension with a knife as we're both freaked out. What the hell is happening? Drive faster, it's not slowing down. I can't drive much faster on this road, it's crap. We were in a small car. Eventually, the road finally and somehow leads out to the main highway. We both breathe a sigh of relief and just are absolutely bewildered at what just happened. We were both sober, and on the ride back, we were both asking each other, that wasn't just me, right? To this day, both of us are haunted by this event. We had some other very strange things happen after that as well. We were both sober every time we encountered something like this, but I'll digress for now. Case file number 1471, written by It's Mia Mia. The Wendy's Drive-thru Mystery. So one day, my husband and I were out running errands, along with our, at the time, 1-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter. We went to a couple stores before going to Lowe's. My husband didn't have his debit card, so we were using mine. After Lowe's, we decided to get food. We went to Wendy's and ordered like normal. As we're pulling up to the window, I went to grab my debit card and couldn't find it. I then remembered that my husband used it at Lowe's last, so he should have it. We're scrambling around to find it before they opened the window, but it was nowhere to be found. Before the worker even opens the window, I tell my husband to ask if they take Apple Pay, because that's all I had at this point. The lady opens the window and he said, "Do you guys take Apple Pay?" She says, "Yeah, hold on a second," and closes the window and walks away. At this point I was annoyed because my husband lost my card, and we all know waiting for a new one is just a pain in the butt. Finally, the lady comes back. My husband has my phone in hand with Apple Pay ready, and the worker hands him my debit card. He started to say it wasn't ours, but he looked at it and sure enough, there was my name. Neither of us could remember handing her the card. We asked our daughter if she saw him hand it off, and she said no, but she was 5 and maybe she wasn't paying attention anyway. At the time, we tried to chalk it up to somehow he handed it to her and we just forgot, but we weren't really convinced. It's still something we talk about almost 2 years, not 3, later. Look back at my pictures to see the project we were working on that required us to go to Lowe's. This was finished in April 2022, so I got the amount of years ago mixed up. Oops. Case file number 1472, written by Sarah X11. The Woman Named Aurora. When I was around 20, a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason, her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, I'm in the car with a friend stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge into a highway when I get a phone call from a random number, so I stop the car but no one answers. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second they get on the highway, some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Turns out the drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't got that phone call. Called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. Rang 3 times and went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Aurora. Please leave your name and number." Never had goosebumps like that in my life. Called it again the next day because I was so confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers, we get to talking. I tell her my entire story, including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number and that she never called me as far as she remembers. Weird. Ask her if she has Facebook to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. Check her Facebook. Holy crap, it's her. If that's not a glitch in the Matrix, then I'm just bat crap crazy. Case file number 1473, written by FF0000IT. How King Crimson Brought Back Bob. I had a friend in high school. Let's call him Bob. Bob was a very nice fellow, and while we weren't that close, we had similar tastes in music and we'd share CDs. This is in late 80s, way before file sharing. Anyway, we eventually graduated, and I moved several hundred miles away to college and we lost touch. When I left for college, I had one of Bob's CDs still in my possession, Beat by King Crimson. Fast forward 10 years. I'd graduated college and was knee-deep in my career and finally saved up enough money and bought my first house. In the new house and while unpacking, I see the CD in a box. Hadn't noticed it in many years and thought, gee, I really should track down Bob and return this. Right then, the doorbell rings. It's Bob. And he says, "Hey, you wouldn't still happen to have my King Crimson CD, do you?" I look down. I'm holding it in my hand. I hand it to him, and his mouth drops open. Mine probably already is. We exchange pleasantries. I probably ask him how he found me, but I no longer remember. He eventually takes off. I haven't seen Bob since. Bonus file, written by Akie Sout. 2 sisters, 2 homes, 1 unsettling night. This happened around 2 years ago. I was home alone one night and was in my bedroom, watching Netflix. The layout of my home is that you come up the stairs and then go back on yourself along the landing. The bathroom door is on the right, followed by my bedroom. It was late, midnight to early hours, which is common for me. Suddenly, I heard a noise of someone being in the house downstairs and paused the TV. Then, as clear as day, I could hear the person walking up the stairs. I was completely frozen and my heart was racing, thinking someone is genuinely in the house and is about to kill me. My cat had also pricked up their ears and was looking out towards the landing, making my fear worse. They got up to the top of the stairs and began walking along the landing. The steps were coming closer to the bedroom, but then it was like they turned into the bathroom. I heard a noise in the bathroom and then nothing. At this point, my cat jumped down off the bed and went into the bathroom. They came out fine, so at that point I investigated and there was nothing. Nothing out of place, nothing to explain the noises, nothing downstairs, nothing. I texted my sister to tell her what a weird experience I'd just had. We've both previously had weird and uneasy feelings and odd experiences before, her more so. She was also awake because the exact same thing had just happened to her. At the time, she was living about 50 miles away in a flat on the top floor. The stairs to her door ran alongside the flat, so you could always hear if anyone was approaching, and there are no other flats on that floor. It's just the one door to hers. The same thing happened where she could hear footsteps approaching the door and then it stopped, and nothing. It wasn't someone who came to the door and then turned around because you would hear the retracting steps. It was the strangest thing. I can't emphasize enough how sure I was that someone was walking around my house. Every step was so clear. And then nothing. But then for her to have the same thing happen at the same time, we just have no explanation. Case file number 1474, written by PTabs226. The Ring in Real Life. After a night of drinking in college, some friends and I went to a friend's house and watched The Ring on DVD. A week later, at the same time, I stumbled back into my dorm and my TV turned on. I didn't turn it on. It turned on by its mother-freaking self. It takes a second for the TV to turn on because it was an older tube TV. I was in the kitchen when I heard the music, and then the picture flashed on. It was the very beginning of the death video, the still of the ladder. A brick fell out of my pants as I ran to grab the remote to turn the TV off. I grabbed the remote and realized the remote had no batteries. Damn! Well, I wasn't going to walk to the TV and turn it off, so I just watched the video. The movie was new enough that it would not have been on TV yet, and I was in campus housing, so we didn't have any premium HBO type channels. With no other option, I watched the entire video, creepy girl and all. It turned out our campus TV station, which would show movies at night, decided to play The Ring. It was just by chance that I walked in at the exact right spot. As for my TV turning on by itself, the TV would turn on whenever I walked into a room and most of the time when someone else walked in. This was one of the first times it turned on by itself, but not the last. It continued for 4 years and happened in 4 different houses and apartments. I still have no explanation for it. Case file number 1475, written by Bandit6 Actual. A dog, a full moon, and a shared bowl of popcorn. This happened around 1991. It's the middle of the night. I'm standing in my sister's living room, and it must be a full moon. Even though it's around 1 a.m. and the lights are off, I can see clearly. There's a mixing bowl with popcorn kernels in the bottom, on the floor, in front of the TV. There's also some rental VHS in a pile nearby. I hear a noise and turn around to see my sister's normally very friendly Labrador Retriever, looking like Cujo, fangs bared, snarling. Suddenly, there's a bright flash of light and I wake up like I hit the bed from a great height. I think to myself, that was a weird dream. Eventually, I fall back to sleep and in the morning I call my sister, planning to tell her the story. But she preempts me by telling me about the weird thing that happened to them in the night. They woke up to the sound of the dog snarling at about 1 a.m. Her husband thought there was a prowler in the house, got a gun and went to fight the dog. She was standing in the living room snarling. He couldn't see anyone, so he flipped on the light. No one was there. The dog instantly stopped snarling and walked to her bed like nothing had happened. He checked the property and went back to bed. We talked a bit and I found out they watched some rental movies. Of course we had popcorn. Why? My sister is a little woo-woo at the times, so I decided not to tell her about my night. She lived about 450 miles away, by the way. Case file number 1476, written by Axel Flask 777, The Impossibly Silent Store. I was running late for work this morning. My wife was tending to our 1-year-old who is sick with a cold. She asked if I could stop at the Walgreens down the street to get him some cough medicine. I was in a huge rush, but didn't want him to go without it, so I headed over there as quickly as I could. My wife and I were on the phone as I was driving and pulling into the parking lot. Street was busy and packed with cars. As I was walking up to the store, I noticed a woman putting her screaming child into her car. Wife was reminding me which medicine to buy. I checked my phone for the time. That's when it got weird. The second I walked into the store, my phone turned off and the call dropped. The sliding door closed behind me and the entire store was empty. The lighting was different from what I was used to, fluorescent and cold. There was no one at the front and no one in any of the aisles I could see. I turned around to look outside and there were no cars in the street, not even the woman who was just there 5 seconds ago. I actually said, "Hello?" twice loudly, feeling like this was some sort of horror movie I was in. The entire store was silent, and I went to grab my phone again to film this in case no one believed me. Of course, it won't turn on. I turned the corner down a random aisle, and just like that, there's people there. The lighting is different now and warmer. There was even music now. I turned to look at the front, and there is a customer mid-transaction with a checker. My phone starts working again, and my wife is calling me. She tells me it just went silent and said the call failed. I stood there for a minute and realized there was nothing I could do. I bought the medicine and went on with my day. I don't know if this was a glitch in the Matrix, coincidental timing, or some weird parallel universe type stuff. All I know is that it was strange as hell, and I didn't really know who to tell this to. Case file number 1477, written by Mark of Shame, The Mercedes That Vanished with the Storm. Driving home on a stormy day, I see that a side road up to the local golf course is blocked off by a flashing barricade. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricades with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light in the back seat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. Thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window and rap on the glass and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving, staring straight ahead. My window rapping or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch or move. I look over and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and request a code 2, no lights or sirens, unit up to my location to help me check them out. Doors are locked. While on the phone, I walk back to my truck to get my go bag. I'm on phone with dispatch. She asked me to get the license number for the car just as a PG&E Power Company cherry picker truck comes tumbling down from up the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number and the car is gone. I talked to the driver of the truck and he said there was an 80-foot tree down across the road and that he didn't think it'd be open for a day or so. So the question is, the hell did the car go? Tree up one way, barricades down the other. It's kept me a little unsettled when stopping at accidents and hazards since then. Case file number 1478, written by Rocker Chicks Rule, How My Debit Card Defied Time and Space. In June of 2018, my daughter and I walked up the road a quarter of a mile away to the local Waffle House for breakfast. Since we were walking, I only took a house key and my debit card and placed them in my jeans pocket. After breakfast, we walked up to the cashier with the ticket. I paid for the meal. Then we left and proceeded to walk back home. When we were almost home, I reached into my pants pocket to grab my key to unlock the door and noticed my debit card was not with my key. I panicked, so we turned around before unlocking the door and went back to the Waffle House to see if I left the card with the cashier. We walked quickly back, also looking along the side of the road in case I dropped it. Once we got back to the Waffle House, the cashier said she gave me my card back to me and no one had turned in a card possibly found on the floor. I felt sick. and all I could think of was hurrying back home and calling the credit card company to cancel my card. We proceeded back towards home again and finally made it home. I unlocked the door and walked past the kitchen, and I noticed from the corner of my eye a piece of paper folded on the countertop. After opening the paper, I was shocked to discover that it was my receipt from the Waffle House wrapped around my debit card. The card and receipt were back home before I made it home. Just so you know, my daughter was walking behind me when I unlocked the door and entered the house, so she didn't have time to place my card and receipt in the kitchen if it was some sort of prank. What the hell? Case file number 1479, written by Euphoric Client 1075, The Clementine That Broke the Universe. This happened in 2011 or 2012, and I can't talk about it without tearing up because I just don't know. I was in high school sociology class. I sat next to my friend Jane, who was notorious for having a crap ton of snacks every day. Small girl, fast metabolism probably. One of her go-tos were clementines, usually bringing one each day and wrapped in a paper towel and kept in her bag, which was like a tote messenger style bag. It stood up on its own and everything. I don't know if that's even relevant. So class is starting and she ate her clementine. I'm annoyed, so I asked her for a slice and we split the clementine. She walked the peel and paper towel to the trash can by our teacher's desk and threw it away. This is all normal. Then she gets back to her desk and reaches down to get her stuff for class and suddenly sits straight up. I'm not sure really how to describe her face except for that she really looked like she saw a ghost. She asked me if she had just eaten her clementine and I'm like, yeah? And I look over and there's clearly a clementine wrapped in a paper towel in her bag where it's usually kept. I immediately was like, oh, you obviously just mistakenly packed two, or didn't eat the one you packed yesterday, etc. She was adamant that wasn't the case and went to the trash can. Then she starts reaching in the trash can and sorting through. Trash? I'm like, Jane, what the hell are you doing? So I go over there and look, and sure enough, there's no clementine peel in there. It's just not there. It has been less than a minute since I watched her throw it in this exact trash can. It was one of those little trash cans, and we emptied it out. By this point, we were losing our minds, sitting on the ground stammering, trying to blame each other for whatever the hell was happening. Our teacher noticed and let us sit out the rest of the class because we were so distraught. The peel was just completely gone. I don't know if it's possible she had a second clementine in her bag all along, but I know 100% that clementine number 1 was eaten and the peel was thrown away. I know it's a small thing, but there really is no explanation. It truly changed my perspective about reality. Case file number 1480, written by Cool Hand Lucas, When Percocet and Neo Collide. I got my wisdom teeth out in 2000, right around the time that the original Matrix came out on VHS. I was bombed completely out of my mind on Percocet after coming back from the surgery. I had awful wisdom teeth. My mom basically just dropped me in the bed and went and rented the movie for me because I'd never seen it in theaters. I remember being irritated that the sun through the window was making the TV glare, but being too out of it to get up. A little bit after the black cat glitch in the Matrix scene, I passed out and apparently slept for about 8 hours. The tape in the VHS machine kept rewinding itself and playing over and over. I woke up and the movie was at roughly the same spot as when I passed out, but it was completely dark outside. 0 time lapse for me, completely lost my mind. Started freaking out and screaming because I thought I'd discovered the secret and somebody turned off the sun. I remember crying and trying to explain to my panicked family, who had never let me live it down. Case file number 1481, written by Maddox, Toronto's Weird Monkey Mystery. My dad had this little toy monkey that he used to call his favorite child and tease me and my siblings with it. Not in a bad way, but it was really frustrating to us and we spent hours trying to steal it from him. Well anyways, one day we finally got it and threw it into the garbage after drawing on it and mangling it for a bit. My dad laughed and searched for it a bit, but basically figured we had thrown it out and gave up after a week or so. Anyways, a few years later, when I was about 17, I'm walking down the street in Toronto. I don't live in Toronto. I was just visiting friends and saw this little orange object on the side of the road. When I walk over to it, I pick it up and see that it was the exact same freaking monkey. It even had the same black Sharpie lines on it from when we drew all over it. I honestly cannot even come up with the chances of that happening, especially considering our garbage is sent to a local dump and is nowhere near Toronto. Case file number 1482, written by Flatcore, The Red Lights That Never Existed. A few years back, I lived in a sober house with a great group of guys that I actually got pretty close to. One night, a good friend that lived in the house with me and I went over to talk to a friend that had relapsed. Had a good conversation for about 2 hours. Around midnight, we decided it was getting late and left. Instead of taking the throughway back, we decided to get some Wendy's and take the long way back. After about 20 minutes into our drive, down a road I'd been down dozens of times, I suddenly see a light ahead of me turn red and have to come to a fairly quick stop. We both look up and at the same time see a cop taking a right-hand turn at the same intersection. We're both a bit relieved, neither of us deep enough into sobriety to shake that innate addict fear of cops. We're sitting there chuckling to ourselves, and after 30 seconds, we're both looking up at the light and chatting. A minute goes by, and then 2, and the light is still red, which by this point we both make a comment on how long it's been red. Immediately after this, there's suddenly headlights coming through my rear window, and I don't mean they were slowly fading in, they were just there. A large SUV suddenly swerves by, laying on the horn and hollering something out of his window. My friend and I immediately commented something like, "Look at this jerk, blowing a red light and blaming us." And as we both looked up, we realized there is no red light. Not only is there no red light, there's no lights at all. Above us is an empty intersection, 4 stop signs, and nothing else. We were both so creeped out, we looked at each other. He said, "What the frick?" And his face was white. We got home after that without incident, and never talked about it again. This was almost 4 years ago. Case file number 1483, written by the Bronze Bear. My teenage nightmare folded into reality. I used to have a recurring dream as a teenager every night for months. I was sitting at a table on the patio of a restaurant. I was out there alone, waiting for my food. A homeless man comes up to the other side of the patio and asks for change. I'm digging in my wallet for a couple dollars. Then I hear tires screech and look up to see a crash in an intersection near the restaurant. I run out there to see if I can help, and as I run out into the road, I get hit by a car. Then I wake up to the impact. After a while, the dream stopped, and I put it out of my mind. Fast forward to me being 28 and sitting in an on-the-border restaurant on the patio waiting for food. A homeless guy comes walking out past the restaurant, but doesn't stop and ask for change. It makes me think about that dream though, and I start to feel uneasy. Shortly after, I hear the tires screech and I see a wreck happen in the intersection near the restaurant. I begin to run out there, but stop at the sidewalk and look out towards the oncoming traffic. There was an SUV not slowing down. She was on her phone and blew through the intersection, completely unaware of what had just happened. Ran out after and checked on the people. Thankfully, everyone was fine. Case file number 1484, written by Brancraw Dog. A Man's Odyssey Through Parallel Lives. I, male 42, am relatively successful, though not as successful as I should be or as big of a failure as I deserve. I have a great wife, female 34, and 2 wonderful children, 3 and 5. I went to bed last night a near perfectly happy man. For reference, I had a girlfriend from the ages of 17 to 21 that I remained very close friends with, until I met my wife 10 years ago. Her and I both decided a close friendship wasn't possible, mostly due to the fact that we were hit or miss on rekindling our relationship for a decade. What I can only account for as a dream completely consumed my day. I remember going to bed in the same house I woke up in with my wife this morning. I was at a gathering with my wife and children, and my old girlfriend was there with her now husband. I got up to get a drink, and she approached me, asking me to go to a back room and enter a closet. She was insistent on me accompanying her. I went inside, and this is where it was dreamy. It was almost third-person omniscient. I was standing in her parents' driveway. We discussed our breakup because she was going to another city for college, but it was like a do-over. We watched our conversation, and this time I agreed to move in with her. I stepped into my own body 21 years ago and got in my truck and drove home. From that moment, I relived my life as though I moved with her. I looked in the mirror and was 21 again. She was there, narrating the whole thing. She graduated while I worked, and then I went to college while she worked, and then we got married. We were at our wedding, celebrating at our reception. I remembered our honeymoon in Mexico. It seemed to move fast, but we had a son, then a daughter. Went on many vacations. We were in love and happy. I had a career completely different than the one I have now. We had an incredibly nice home, friends. I had memories of my new friends and was enjoying the different life. We would lay in bed at night, and I'd ask about my current wife and the life she had on the other side. She could take me and show me. Very vivid. I kept thinking, this is a dream. I have to wake up. She insisted it wasn't a dream, and I didn't have the usual dreamlike physical characteristics. I didn't believe it was real, insisted we go to my parents' house to confront them and leave this dream. They looked so happy. In my real life, they got divorced 18 years ago. My formerly incredibly successful brother was living at home. He was a pothead that had no motivation to better himself. I started to remember that about him. It was as if all my real-life memories were disappearing, and this was my reality now. I kept telling her I didn't believe it. We drove to the house I live in now that I just built and moved into 15 months ago. It was a vacant lot. We drove by the facility I work at, and I recognized it, but it didn't work there. I couldn't even tell you what I did there. This was becoming very confusing. I thought, I'm gonna wake up any minute. But I never did. I live with this girl. We had a son and a daughter. I can see their faces. I can hear their voices. We watched them grow. The son was in baseball and the daughter in gymnastics. We had pool parties, went on vacations. I'd ask about my other wife, and she'd tell me I need to take my medication again. I'd talk to the doctor that this life I remembered was just a figment of my imagination. All of a sudden, I was forgetting about my real life. Years had passed. I couldn't decide what was real and what wasn't. She wasn't narrating our life anymore. It was just my life. I would take the kids to school, to practice, come home to my wife who I loved. I kept thinking it had been too long to be a dream. I went back to the doctor and told him what I remembered, and he chalked it up to me being schizophrenic. We struggled through that for years. I had to quit drinking to stop the memories. It was so hard to function some days. I knew I had a family somewhere. My work struggled. I spent all my time trying to find my other wife. Then I found her on Facebook. She lived 1,500 miles away. I flew out to see her. I went to her house. She was overweight and depressed. I tried telling her I knew her. I was arrested, and after posting bail, I flew back home. My wife was so supportive. I began to realize this life was real, and I had imagined the other life. We watched Shutter Island, and I was just another nutjob that had made it through life somehow. Once I accepted this, I was fine. I didn't have any more problems. My other wife dropped charges, and I was back at work without issues. Years later, I have just retired. I'm recounting the days 20 years ago when I thought I had another life. My wife tells me I can. All I have to do is go into our closet. I was confused. She proceeds to tell me that she had gone into the closet that we went into, back at the gathering I used to remember, and I can go back. I felt so confused. I asked her, "Did you know this the whole time? And you did this to me?" She told me she too remembered the gathering. She had gone into the closet and lived her life as though we never split. She said she made it until I died at the age of 93. She came back and got me. Now I'm losing my mind again. I'm old. I have lived nearly 50 years with this woman. I don't really even remember my old life. I remember my original kids' names, but not even what they look like. She tells me we can go back, but if I want, we never have to return to the closet, and we can live the life we have together. I got up and walked to the closet, walked inside and walked back out, into the gathering from the beginning, as if I'd never left. My original wife was there. We left and came home with our kids. We went to bed and I didn't say a word about what happened. This morning it was surreal driving to work. I felt like I was driving to the wrong place. It took me until 8 a.m. sitting at my desk to accept this reality. I remember so many vivid details. I don't know what life I'm in. I'm happy. I have my now wife and my now life. Kinda wish I had the other life's bank account though. But I feel like I've lived twice. I don't want to go back to be with my girlfriend, but I do want to know what happened to everyone I knew for so many years. Like 99% of my life has returned, but the 1% that is different is there. I remember 2 pass. My wife listened and gave me a big hug and told me she's glad I chose her. But did I? I think I did. I felt so much wiser at work today, so much more mature. Like I had lived before and got to do it all over again, and I have much more confidence in my decisions. I can't find any loopholes in my memory. Other than that, I don't remember who won the World Series or Super Bowls in the other life. Nothing that stands out that this was a figment of my imagination. Case file number 1485, written by So Stupid 246. Writing from the unknown. Something was written on my grocery list that I could not have written ahead of time. And yet there it was in my handwriting, and it's driving me crazy how it got there. Long story short, when I start running low on household things, I start making a list. I will add to it over the next few days, so by the time I get to grocery shopping, the list is almost done. Then the night before, I head to the store. I go on the grocery store app to load any coupons I want or need. So I'm on the app and I see a coupon for Blue Buffalo cat treats. It's not a brand I normally buy, but I load the coupon anyway and figured I'll buy them for my cat. I go to my grocery list to add blue cat treats to the list. Yet my list, which had 15 items written, had the words blue cat treats already written as the 3rd item. I just stared at it, totally confused. It's my handwriting, and since it's the 3rd item written, that means I wrote it several days ago. Again, I never buy this brand. No one else lives with me, so no one else could have written it. I did not go on the app days before to notice the coupon. So I'm completely puzzled as to how I already wrote blue cat treats down. I had absolutely no memory of writing it, and no way of knowing there was a coupon for it. Case file number 1486, written by Pizza 24/7. Did we witness a space-time slip in the park? My husband and I were walking our dog in a very busy and large urban park. We have lived in large cities our entire lives. We are very used to and accustomed to being surrounded by a lot of different types of people. In short, it takes a lot for something to faze us. We've seen a lot. We were along a busy path in this large city park, with a lot of people around, and we had our dog. This man coming walking towards us starts making eye contact with both of us almost immediately. He stops next to us and says, "Hey boss, how's it going?" and puts his hands out to shake our hands. We look at him because he's acting like he knows us, so we're a bit embarrassed. Trying to remember who he is, we hesitate, and then all of a sudden he says, "Why are you stalking me? I keep seeing you guys. Why are you following me?" and says it once or twice more as we quickly walk away from him. We walk past him, and he walks past us, going opposite directions. We make it to a point to wait exactly 5 seconds. I actually count to myself 1 through 5 before I look back to make sure he did indeed go away and isn't following us. My logic was, I wanted to ignore him in case he was dangerous and sort of diffuse it. But I also wanted to make sure he wasn't following us, as he started to get aggressive a bit in his tone. I turn around and he is nowhere to be seen. I mean literally nowhere. I can't exactly describe the area, but it was pretty open. Even if he sprinted in any direction for 5 seconds fast, you would still have seen him at least somewhere. It was also open and there weren't really any trees or things he could hide behind. I'm sure you may be reading this thinking he was a crazy on the street that can be found in any city. Here's what we found really jarring. Maybe not each thing separately, but put together. He was dressed extremely well. Yes, I know, those with mental illness and or those living on the street can look quite presentable. I'm not trying to be rude, but he looked wealthy. Like old money wealthy. Super preppy and well dressed, about mid-50s, almost awkwardly tall, maybe 6'6". People have screamed at us before on the street, and I've never seen this put together. Again, not impossible, just a bit odd, honestly. He was so sure in his conviction that he knew us, and we were stalking him. The look in his eyes was terrifying. I can't exactly describe it, but he seemed just so sure. We have no idea who he was, and no one looked at what was going on, which by itself wasn't odd. People in my city ignore people shouting and antics all the time without a care in the world, for better or worse. But when I tell you everyone around didn't even glance in our direction. People may ignore what's going on typically, but they'll walk the other way, not into whatever is going on. Moreover, plenty of dogs within sight didn't even seem to look at this man screaming. He had a bizarre, surprising accent. Again, not by itself odd, but adds to the weirdness. I believe it was Russian. He vanished. Both me and my husband turned around after 5 seconds and agreed he was nowhere to be found. There was nowhere logically for him to be found. We realized after the fact that he appeared seemingly out of nowhere when he was walking towards us. Anyway, this was so odd. It's like he appeared out of nowhere from a different time and was so sure in his conviction, to the point where we were both like, was he at the coffee shop we were both at earlier? Did we indeed walk the same way to the park? That doesn't make sense. He was walking towards us. It's really hard to describe over text. But he appeared as quickly as he left, and no one around us seemed even remotely bothered. We've had people on the street chase us, threaten us at knife point, throw bottles at us. We've been called homophobic slurs multiple times. Quite frankly, this was just as freaky, if not scarier, than all of those. All due to the fact that I can't come up with an explanation, especially for the vanishing. My husband is a science guy, and he believes in absolutely nothing that isn't evidence-based. He's sort of my skeptical pulse for things, but I can tell even he was completely thrown off. Case file number 1487, written by then inevitable 9678. This stranger speaks my life events word for word. This happened last night, and I'm just feeling so weird about it. I haven't told anything to my friends or family because I feel like they'll think I'm crazy, but wanted to see if the same thing had ever happened to anyone else. Basically, last night I was out walking my dog in a park near my townhouse. It had gotten dark, but there were still a few people out. As I'm about to start walking home, I hear a man and a woman talking. They were a bit older than me, maybe mid-30s. But the reason it catches my attention is because the man sounds exactly like me. It actually sounds like I'm listening to a recording of myself, same voice, even same laugh. I walk a bit closer with my dog, and then it gets really weird. The guy is talking to the other woman about stuff that's straight out of my life, but from his point of view. He mentions this trip I took to Iceland a few years back, a small car accident I had recently, and even my plans to start my own business, which I'm still figuring out and haven't told anyone about. Meanwhile, my dog is acting up and even growling, which is very unlike him. I sat there for a while, hidden and just trying to make sense of it all. But I started feeling really weird and kind of sick, so I took my dog home. I've had some time to think about it, but I just can't make sense of it. I'm still really freaked out. I feel like I stumbled across another version of myself. Case file number 1488, written by Luth That Pog. Amazon is busting into the glitch business. I had ordered some jewelry on Amazon. When I got them, they were way too small, so I needed to return them. So my boyfriend and I put it in the package and folded the bag and put it in the trunk of the car. This way, we wouldn't forget to return it to UPS. So the next day, he returned it with a few other things we needed to return. I got an email saying it was returned and the refund is on its way. Here's the crazy part. Yesterday, a week after he returned it, he was cleaning his car out and there was the freaking package, folded like he folded it a week ago, and in the trunk with the jewelry in it and everything. But what's even crazier is that the package had the freaking return label on it that the UPS placed. After he found it, he came and asked me if the package was returned back to the sender. Like I put it back in the trunk or something, and I was like, no. Also, I've been grocery shopping, running errands all week, which requires me to open and shut that trunk, and I never saw it once in there. We were still rubbing our heads together, thinking how this had to have happened. There's no way I would have missed seeing it there all week. There's no way he brought it back to the trunk after returning it by accident. If that was the case, I wouldn't have gotten my refund. Amazon doesn't refund until they receive your package or have confirmation it's been sent by UPS. So now I have this piece of jewelry that I don't want. Apparently the universe wanted me to have it. Creepy file written by Grace122, The Home Alone Nightmare. So this happened last year. My boyfriend, now husband, and I recently moved into our apartment. We're still getting situated into a new space. One afternoon, he had left to go help his family with something and left me alone in the apartment. I didn't do much but lay around all day and finally decided to try taking a nap. I double-checked the front door was locked. I was paranoid about living in an apartment building with neighbors so close by. I put on a YouTube video and laid down on the couch. After about 10 to 15 minutes of laying there, I heard him standing outside the front door trying to unlock it. I know I wasn't asleep or hadn't fallen asleep because I was still listening to the same YouTube video. I didn't wake up though. I rolled over and pretended to still be sleeping. I heard him come in, close the door behind him, and put something on the table. He walked into the living room and I could feel him standing near me. I heard him say something like, "Grace, are you asleep?" And then heard him walk away into the back bedroom where he sat down in his computer chair. Shortly after this, I actually fell asleep. When I woke up, it was about an hour later. I walked over to the back bedroom and it was empty. I ended up texting him asking where he went. He responded that he hadn't left his family's house yet, but he would be home soon. I started freaking out. Who was in my house? I ran over to the front door to make sure it was still locked, thinking that hopefully I had actually fallen asleep and dreamt the whole thing. But the door was unlocked and there was a pile of mail sitting on the table that was not there before. When my boyfriend got home, I told him the whole story. He seemed to think I was dreaming. Yet we cannot explain how the mail got brought up or how the door was unlocked. We checked the whole apartment for signs of anything missing, but everything was fine. To this day, I don't nap in my apartment because of this. Case file number 1489, written by Sirius Ad 9704. Torrential rain to bright and sunny in a blink of an eye. This was in 2016 or 2017. My friend and I were driving through a quiet, small neighborhood in Traverse City, Michigan. It was a rainy day. In the middle of the day, we were stone cold sober. I feel like I need to say that to feel validated. We passed a street and I mentioned that our friend Ashley recently moved to a house on that street. For the sake of the story, I think it was Fern Street or something like that. The next thing we know, we were stopped at a stop sign at the T in the road. An older model olive convertible was turning left off the cross street, onto the street we were stopped at. The guy driving it had to jerk his wheel super hard to avoid hitting us as he made the turn. It was like he didn't see us until he was halfway into his turn. I looked over at my friend, and she was already looking at me. I looked back outside and did not recognize a damn thing. It was now a sunny day, and our entire surroundings were completely unfamiliar. My friend was like, "Hon, I'm scared. Where are we?" And I kept asking her the same thing. I asked if she saw the car almost hit us, and she had. Neither of us knew where we were or what was happening. Suddenly, everything became familiar again. It was like our entire surroundings morphed into a recognizable intersection. I was like, "Oh my god, we're near the Sail Inn," a bar we knew. The weather was rainy again, and we knew the exact intersection we were stopped at. I asked my friend what she remembered last before we got to the stop sign. She said she remembered me talking about Fern Street. That was the last thing I remembered too. So we drove back to that street, and it was about 3 blocks down the road. My friend hates being reminded of this day because it still scares the crap out of her, and it haunts me too. I am so fascinated by this experience. I just want to know what the hell happened to my damn mind, body, and existence. The only thing I wish is that we knew what time it was and how long it lasted. Felt like it was slow and fast at the same time. I don't know, man. Weird crap that I'll probably die trying to understand. And this is why I have fear of missing out about dying. Case file number 1490, written by Fabulous Rich, 8974. The Day Time Stood Still, a Survivor's Tale. Okay, this was 25 years ago, but still baffles me to this day. I woke up for work at 20 years old, like I did every morning at 7 a.m., but something felt off. Everything I did that morning felt like I was in slow motion or time was speeding faster. I did all the normal things, had breakfast, shower, etc., but it seemed to take so long. I looked at the time and thought, how has so much time passed already? I knew I was going to be late if I didn't hurry, so I left the house in a rush. But even running out the door felt like I was in slow motion. I literally ran to the train station, but it felt like I was getting nowhere fast. I can't explain it fully, but I was at my normal regular speed. Yet everything around me seemed to be moving at a different rate even when walking. It was like everything around me was going a little bit faster. The wind, the cars, the birds, the people. It all seemed to be going faster than normal. I made it to the station and ran to my platform just to see my train leave. I missed it by seconds. I thought, okay, well, there is another train in 15 minutes. It'll be a bit late, but not too bad. 30 minutes passed, and I asked the rail worker what was happening. He said he was as confused as I was because the next train should have been here. He couldn't reach anyone at the next station. A few minutes later, he was able to reach someone, and he looked like he was going to pass out. He made an announcement over the speaker that the train had derailed in a tunnel. I said to him that that was a train I missed earlier, and he said, yes, you're lucky you missed it. So they arranged buses to take us to our destination, and I heard on the news that night the grim details. Nobody had been seriously hurt because the compartment that was the worst affected was empty. They found it odd that no passengers were in that compartment. That compartment was the center of the derailment. Had there been someone in there, they'd be seriously injured or dead. They showed images of it and I freaked out. I am a person of habit, and I like to sit in the same area every day. I sat in that compartment every day, the same compartment that was the worst affected. One lady in the compartment next to it had a broken arm. The media was saying how lucky it was that nobody was in the other one. I would have been in the other one. Had I not missed the train, I might not be here today. That day was so weird and I've never forgotten it. How I was rushing so fast that morning, but no matter how fast I went, time sped up faster. How I almost caught up to it, missing it by mere seconds. I know people might say, oh, it's the morning, you were tired, but it wasn't that. The moment I got up, something felt really off, and that feeling only left after I found out about the train. After the train derailed, it was like time went back to normal, and I never missed the train again. The only day I missed the train was the day it derailed. I feel like something saved my life, and for some reason, I was meant to be here. Case file number 1491, written by Ariel XXX Lee. The Mysterious Return of the Skeleton Key. My dad loved to find things that other people were throwing away, mostly furniture, art, etc. He found an old wooden dresser in the trash. He refurbished it, sanded it down, and stained the wood. It was beautiful and looked brand new when he was done with it. Anyway, that dresser was in my room literally my whole life. When I was in high school, my dad revealed to me that if you pull out the top drawer, there was a hook back there with a skeleton key hanging on it that would lock the bottom drawer. This blew my mind in itself. That whole time, this dresser in my room for 10 years had the key inside of it to lock the drawer with. He didn't want to tell me when I was younger because he didn't want me to lose the key. My senior year of high school, 2008, my parents got divorced and we moved houses. I ended up losing the key to the dresser. I was so upset that I lost the key. My dad waited years to tell me about the key because he knew I'd lose it. But I still had the dresser. 2 years ago, 14 years since I had moved, I was at my mom's house just helping out with chores. I had just vacuumed and was putting the vacuum away, admiring the freshly vacuumed carpet. I saw something on the carpet. It almost blended in with the design on the oriental rug, but it was shiny. I bent down to find a skeleton key on the ground. At the time, I thought it was the key to my mom's cabinet in the kitchen, which I thought was weird. We always just left it in the lock. I walked over to the cabinet, but the key was already in the lock. I was totally confused where this key even came from or what it went to. I had just vacuumed the carpet. There's no way it was laying there without me sucking it up in the vacuum. A week or two after I found the key, I had put it out of my mind and forgot all about it. I was laying down for bed, on the brink of falling asleep, when I thought, what if this is the key to my dresser? I instantly jumped out of bed, ran downstairs, grabbed the key, and went to the dresser to check. The key worked. It was my key that I hadn't seen in so many years. I was so upset with myself over losing that key, I never told my dad that I had lost it. I immediately called him and told him that I lost it all those years ago, and it just came back to me. Quite literally appearing out of nowhere. Still blows my mind to think about. Case file number 1492, written by K. Dangelo 811. My toddler's fall defies the laws of physics. It was spring of 1999 in New York City. I was spending the morning with my infant and toddler sons at the Museum of Natural History. We were in the lobby. I had the baby in an infant carrier on my chest. My 2.5-year-old was in the front seat of a double stroller. It was a well-made stroller, but the design was terrible. They don't even make strollers like it now. It was pretty much 2 full-size strollers, one in front of the other. It was too long and narrow, unwieldy, and hard to manage. I was helping my son get out of the front seat. He was a well-coordinated, agile kid, So our move was I would put them on all brakes, then hold his hand as he stood on the stroller bar and jump to the ground. Easy peasy. We'd been doing it for 2 months, except this time it went wrong. I was holding his hand with one hand, I had my other arm around the baby on my chest. As he jumped, something went wrong with the brakes. The stroller swung out from under him mid-jump. His feet slipped up in the air and he fell to the ground head first. I wasn't able to get my other hand free in time to catch him. It was paralyzingly terrifying. Everything was in slow motion and it seemed like it got dark and all sound stopped. I watched him head first for the solid stone floor of the lobby of the museum. There was no way to stop it. And then all at once, the sound came back and there he was, standing in front of me. Safe and sound, feet on the ground. What the hell? I was so stunned and shaken and felt like I was going to cry. I hugged him and held him close. I was looking around to see if anyone had noticed anything strange. Everyone was just doing their thing. I guess I must have looked startled because he said, "What, mommy?" I was so wigged out I just could not talk about it. He is 27 now and doesn't remember any of it. But I really wish I had asked him then what he had experienced. He was verbally precocious and had quite a lot to say at that age. I wonder what his answer would have been. I didn't believe in glitches before that. No possible way that could have happened without a full-on 100% glitch. Case file number 1493, written by EZZ, Unraveling the Mystery of the Neon Man. I live in Chicago. It's a big and beautiful city, and ironically, also the city in the Matrix, same street names and so on. One of my hobbies on extremely nice days is to go downtown and follow odd-looking people around. I think this is called being a flâneur in French, and I've experienced some really weird things while following people, some that could be equated to Matrix glitches, even though I've never really had that thought before. The one that stands out in my mind as the most Matrix-y was a few summers ago. It was a Saturday, and I was downtown with a parkour training group. Session was wrapping up at around 6 p.m., and everyone was getting ready to go home or somewhere else. I was sitting in a large tree we liked to climb, and was looking down on an extremely odd man. He had been watching us literally all day, since 10 a.m. He was in his late 20s, I'd assume, thin but muscular. He wore sunglasses and a bright green and pink short-sleeve collared shirt and cargo shorts. He just sat there for the entire 8 hours and didn't freaking move, aside from maybe a shift in his seat whenever he saw something that impressed him. At this point, only 4 people were left lingering. 1 trekker, his 2 female friends, and myself. The man got up, went over to the group of 3, and said something. It looked intense, and the 2 girls stood bolt upright while the male threw his hands up in the air, dropping to his sides quickly in a wild shrugging gesture. They were out of earshot. I jumped down from my tree and stumbled, botched landing, over to the trio. Apparently the man had left, and I saw him walking briskly down the stairs towards Michigan Avenue, the main street of downtown Chicago. I was intent on following him, but I wanted to make sure he wasn't crazy first. When I got to the remaining 3 youths, the 2 girls just stood there in the same position they were before, completely quiet. I asked about the man, to which the male replied, sounding rather offended. "What man? It's just me and these 2 here." For a brief moment, his face took on a strained look as if trying to remember the man, like he should remember the man, but the look vanished as quickly as the man had. When it was clear that he wasn't going to say anything on the matter, I turned and jogged down the stairs towards Michigan Avenue. I looked left and right, then left again, and right again. I couldn't spot the guy. It had been less than a minute since he began walking, and he was already out of sight. He could have crossed the street, but he would still have been waiting for a break in the traffic to do so. Other than that, the street was weirdly void of pedestrians. There was an open park to my right and rushing traffic to my left, and not a man in sight. Then I heard a scream from behind me and ran back to the park to see the 2 girls looming over the guy. I pushed them back and saw the male, who had slumped over, out cold and drooling a mixture of blood and spittle. He looked like he had been beaten badly, just really had the snot knocked out of him. He was a pretty big guy, one of the most muscular guys I ever met. He could have taken 2 or 3 of anyone else in the park, no problem, but there he was down for the count. I asked the girls if they had seen what happened, They said he was talking to himself and then just fell over. I told one to call an ambulance and continued to question the other. I asked about the man. They said they don't remember any man. I asked if they remember me coming over there. They didn't remember that either. Very odd. The ambulance arrived very shortly after and took the slumped over mess away on a stretcher. I sat there trying to explain in detail the events of the last 10 minutes to these girls who would just not believe me about the man in neon green and pink. Case file number 1494, written by Paradigm Control. The universe stole my cream soda. I was biking around a neighborhood town, Elora. We were going to the local gorge for a swim. We picked up a case of 12 cream sodas and tried to bike with them on one of our handlebars. Of course, this was a terrible idea, and as we got to the crosswalk, it fell over and broke open and the cans went everywhere. We managed to, coincidentally, save 9, and there were 3 of us, so 3 each. Not bad. Anyways, as we're biking, I, being paranoid about dropping things, count the ones I'm holding. Only 2. I asked my friends to count theirs. They each gave 3. I am a little miffed, but 1 less cream soda for me wasn't that big of a deal. So I checked my pockets, everything, and no cream soda. I figured it must have fallen out. Now, as we parked our bikes in the nearby forest trail, I hopped off my bike. As I do, I kick a cream soda can that was sitting near my foot. I didn't hear one fall, and it wasn't rolling down the slope of the trail, it was just sitting there. I asked if either of my friends had dropped one of theirs, because I had both of mine still. They said nope. The mysterious cream soda can that had vanished returned to me at my feet when we stopped biking. I thought about this for a second, wondering if I had put one in my water bottle holder underneath my bike. Seems logical, except there was already a water bottle there in its place. Case file number 1495, written by Mysterious Rock 9559. Twisted geometry of the underground levels. For several years, I worked as a guard in an office building which included 5 floors and 4 underground. The underground floors are mainly for parking. Every 2 hours, we need to patrol all the floors, starting at 5, then go down each floor by the elevator. At subfloor 3, parking lot, there is a long walk that connects to the office building with a courthouse for cars. They drive between the two. Takes about 7 minutes to walk there. In my patrols, I need to go there to the checking points. But I never did this because no one instructed me how to get to it. The few times I tried to find it by myself at night, pretty spooky, I ended up being lost and had to go back. So I was past that place, turn around and go to the elevator to get the underground floor number 4. 2 weeks before my resignation, I told myself, what the heck, I'll try to go there again. I go to underground 3 in the elevator, check the nearest checkpoint on my work phone app. Needed to scan a barcode, and continued to the courthouse. Here is the weird part. When I got to the place where the road to the courthouse was supposed to be, I found the wall of the underground 4th floor. I was stunned. I thought maybe I did go to the 4th floor by accident, which seems pretty weird by itself, because every few meters there's a sign on the wall indicating the floor you are currently on. Big paint of the number, which was 3 all the way to the wall. I went back, noticing now that every sign on the wall says 4. I thought, okay, maybe I went to the wrong floor. But when I got back to the elevator, it said 3. The hour was 3 a.m. I was alone and you needed a key, which I had at the time, to work the elevator. Above all that, when I start the patrol, I lock all the doors to the building. Of course, so no one can get in while I'm not at the entrance. I know I didn't get to the 4th floor by accident while walking, since you need to walk about 10 minutes just to do that in a pitch black tunnel, which I never did since I'm afraid of the dark. Too many horror movies. That's the first and last time I had a glitch in my life, and I really don't know how this could happen. Case file number 1496, written by American Slang 59. The Road, Purgatory, and Bright Eyes. I used to work in music and toured with this band. The guitarist, Josh, of the band's best friend, Matt, had died a couple years back. He always talked about the kid, and he seemed like a great guy. Josh always had this recurring dream. Matt was standing on this abandoned street which, supposedly, was metaphorical for purgatory. Josh had all these conversations with Matt in these dreams, and because he had overdosed unexpectedly, he felt like his spirit was not able to move on. At the end of the dreams, Matt would take a bulb from the streetlight on the street they were standing on. Josh described these dreams in extreme detail, and I could pretty much picture what the street looked like. Fast forward to about 6 months into touring with these guys. They were huge Bright Eyes fans and wanted to stop in Cassadaga, Florida. Bright Eyes singer wrote an album there, and it's a really creepy, spiritual medium place. It might be worth noting that 6 of the 7 other people I was with are atheists. So we drive into Cassadaga around 2 or 3 a.m. and drive around. Suddenly, this big black dog comes in the middle of the road and just stops and looks at us. The guys in this band were weird as hell and were saying things like, "Follow the dog, it's trying to show us something." And in my mind, I'm just thinking they're all freaking idiots. We followed this dog for a few blocks as it was walking pretty slowly. All of a sudden, we turn onto a street and the dog bolts. We try to speed up, but Josh says, "Stop the freaking van. This is it." We are all confused, and he gets out of the van and looks around. "This is it. This is the street in my dream." We hung around for 15 minutes, and from the way he described the street, from having houses on the left to a park on the right, it was definitely the street. As we get in the van, a street light goes off, and we just drive off. He claims he never had more dreams about it, as that was closure on everything. Bonus file, written by Cyrus Kane. Anxiety, Ace, and the Doll. When I first moved into my new house when I was 18, my black lab Ace was anxious to finally get a chance to explore. He had been restrained, so he wouldn't get hurt during the unpacking process. He excitedly ran up the stairs, checking out rooms and sniffing at toilets in the bathrooms. We all went downstairs to the basement, but when we turned back to see where he was just standing at the top of the stairs staring at us. He wasn't panting or wagging his tail. We called for him to come down with us, but no matter what we did, he just stood there looking scared. We picked him up and carried him down with us. While he was down there, he was completely scared, so we brought him back up. Several months had passed and he continued to be scared of the basement. While I was on the laundry side of the basement, I noticed there was a panel beneath the stairwell that could be moved. I moved it aside and found an empty space with a solitary, ceramic doll laying in the center of it, staring with a blank gaze in my direction. I removed it and took it upstairs, throwing it away in the trash outside. The very next time my dog came inside with us, he followed me down the stairs to the basement without a second thought and continued to the day he died. This still unnerves me to this day. Caissons for file 1453. When a hairdryer's cord defies logic. This one is hard to place. I don't think it can be quantum immortality because there'd be no reason the you in a different universe would have a hairdryer that she couldn't use either, due to such a short cord. I'm really not sure. Maybe instead of a DOP event, disappearing object phenomena, it's MOP, morphing object phenomena. Somehow, the length of the cord actually morphed to be shorter. I suppose if objects can disappear, they could change their properties as well, spontaneously. Caissons for the bonus file. The mystery of the empty cabin. The mug of water is disturbing to me. Of all the details in this, it's the most disturbing aspect. I'm not even sure why. Does anyone else feel that way? I mean, it could have just been a person that broke in to this abandoned cabin and was drinking and then left, but I don't know, it feels weird to me. Of course, the line's being cut. Did he call with a cell phone? It's very odd. Caissons for the bonus file. A priest, a scapular, and a family tragedy. I'm right there with you. I don't think any particular religion describes what the creator would be like, or what life after all quantum immortality deaths are exhausted would be like. But especially with all the stories I've read at this point, that I do believe there is something else out there that is currently beyond what we can observe. It's hard to deny that. There's just too many anomalies going on that I can't see fitting in neatly without some force beyond the universe having a role. And now time for the joke of the day. A woman in labor suddenly shouted, "Shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't, didn't, can't." "Don't worry," the doc said. "Those are just contractions." This is like a joke that Data would make on Star Trek TNG. You can't use contractions. Well, these words are less painful than the real thing. That's a bonus. Caissons for file 1454. From pizza into a triangle UFO. Triangle-shaped UFOs appear most common in the reports I can find. But I think there are multiple design types, perhaps from different species. Why does it have to just be one species of alien, right? There could be more than one. The technology of these crafts strikes the biggest hit in my brain because it makes the story nevertheless incredible, even if it turns out to just be advanced military aircraft. For instance, to rise thousands of feet in a second, if that, with no sound. By our current laws of physics, this is impossible. First off, from the compression of the air creating a sonic boom, you'd hear that instantly. And secondly, the G-forces accelerating that fast would rip apart any ship constructed from any known materials instantly. It would just disintegrate, basically. So whatever tech is involved is capable of nullifying how we understand the current laws of physics, which is absolutely thrilling to me. There's so much yet to learn. If it's something the military already learned, or other aliens, it's still out there, ready to be discovered. Case notes for file 1455. The Unexplained Folded Fleece Freakout. A DOP event caught almost directly in view. At some point in that walk, his jacket popped off, phased through the fence, and went out for its own walk. There is no explanation outside of a glitch in the Matrix. This simulation bugged out, or some divine force acting upon it to first remove it and then transport it without even being seen. That's incredible. It's almost like the memory of it happening was erased. Case notes for the bonus file. The Supernatural Cocoa Plantation. I wonder if spirits can concentrate their aura into a visual spectrum to appear so bright in one area, like their face. But if so, what was the goal here? Very weird. And now time for the joke of the day. Hear about the new restaurant called Karma? There's no menu. You just get what you deserve. I wonder what I would get. Maybe some candy? I'm pretty sweet. Yeah. Case notes of file 1456. An EMT's dream leads to a real-life crisis. The subconscious human mind is aware of so much more than is fed into the conscious mind. It's curious. We can ask the question, what force decides what the subconscious is allowed to feed into the conscious self-aware self? What is directing that? Is it just pure quantum chaos that decides, or is there some other force acting upon it, like a soul? Makes you wonder. Case notes for file 1457. Vanishing in the mountains. That you never saw them again means they weren't rooted in that place in time. I'm guessing the trail has existed for a while, deeper in the past, and they were traveling on it, walking normally, in the past, and then you saw their echo in the future, another echo in time. Case notes, file 1458. The Mysterious Lady in a Luxe Boutique. Remember, soul projection isn't limited to the current timeline. Your mom, probably in a dream as perceived by her when it happened, did indeed help your sister with her outfit. Explains the style persisting into her future too, and disappearing from a highly guarded exit that she couldn't have disappeared or exited from if she was just a normal person. It's rather sweet, isn't it? And now time for the quote of the day. Insane people are always sure that they are fine. It is only the sane people who are willing to admit that they are crazy. Nora Ephron. Well, it's that other saying of, you're probably not crazy if you ask yourself the question of, am I crazy? Because there's introspection going on there that a crazy person probably isn't going to have. I don't know if it's true in all cases, but it makes sense to me. So I'll just keep asking, am I crazy? Maybe that in of itself is crazy. I don't know. The mind is a weird thing. By the way, if you want a psychological thriller, I recommend the show Chance on Hulu. It's pretty interesting. It's with Hugh Laurie in it, and he's a neuropsychiatrist. He recommends people to psychologists to help them, but he gets roped into this weird, abusive mystery with one of his patients. Anyways, I don't want to spoil anything, so go give it a watch if you're into that. Case notes for file 1459. The Mind-Blowing Cat Conspiracy. Mind-blowing is a fair assessment, I would say. And yeah, there's no way you wouldn't have heard Luna moving, as you described, so quickly, and being with her brother, even if, for some reason, Luna just went to her brother, napping together, and never fought. You would have heard the cat rushing in from the kitchen. Is it just pet teleportation? Maybe. Something along those lines does seem to happen often. And I wonder, maybe teleportation is only possible for placeholders. That is to say, pets and maybe insects and humans that don't have a soul. They're just creations of the simulation. Whereas some people and some animals really do have souls. They are animated. Everyone else is just a placeholder, like in a video game where there's NPCs and real players in an MMO. only much more complex and realistic. And now time for the fact of the day. Honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. The long shelf life of honey is due to its low moisture content and acidic pH. This creates an environment that inhibits the growth of microorganisms. I just thought that's pretty cool. And not just for prepper ideology or preparedness, right? Preparedness. But it makes sense to have food that lasts a long time. Even if it's just canned food, but honey is a sweetener that'll last a long time. Much more than sugar, I believe. But just a word of caution, if you buy honey in a supermarket, sometimes some of them are not actually honey, or they're mixtures of honey and high fructose corn syrup or some other sweetening syrup that looks like honey but isn't honey. You can definitely tell it if you do a comparison. I think the Walmart Great Value brand is not real honey, so just keep that in mind. It's one of those cases where usually spending more money is worth it. And if you want a real treat, get the comb as well. Damn, it's so delicious. It's really like a natural candy bar. Case notes for file 1460. The songbird that saved my soul. This reminds me a lot of, and spoiler warning for Harry Potter. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it, but yeah. Assuming you've seen it, spoiler warning. At the end, after Dumbledore is killed by Snape, I think it's in the book too, but in the movie, the characters go up to the top of the tower and they look up at this beautiful sunrise sky. And in the distance, you hear and see the phoenix that Dumbledore owned, or at least kept as a pet, singing. It's the songbird song, the melody of death. But it's kind of beautiful in a way. At any rate, I'm sorry for your loss. But it is beautiful to think that it's not a complete loss. Whatever the afterlife is, who we are, the ripple in the ocean that we are, never fades completely, or at least not immediately after death, and I find that beautiful. Case notes for the bonus file. Demon faces the fury of our fearless Rottweiler spirit. So I do believe that animals have souls, and if they do, they guard their owners even after life, in their own death, their own hollowed out corner of the afterlife. They don't just vanish away. And we all know that dogs are fierce protectors. And you know this in real life too. Even if the pet hasn't died, they're fiercely protective of their owner's grave if the owner dies, especially dogs. They will sit at the grave of their previous master and just offer it a guarding. Almost like how we guard the veterans' memorials with the actual human guard there. Ours is a bit more calibrated, but hey, the spirit and the intent is what counts. It also makes me wonder, sleep paralysis might actually reveal that the demons we see are only accessible in this dreamlike state, but they really exist. If your spirit dog defended you from it, well, it wasn't just defending you from a figment created by your own imagination, no. It really was there. Maybe they can only be accessed or visible when you're in that dreamlike state. And now to lighten the mood, the joke of the day. A man goes to the circus. After the show, he speaks to the manager and asks for a job. Alright, what can you do? The manager asks. I can do great bird impressions, the man replies. Psh, a lot of people can do that. Oh well, the man says and flies away. I guess that's a pretty good bird impression. I would concur with that. Was he like flapping his wings, or did he have like Superman flight where he can just hover? I'd prefer the hovering aspect, like using your body's energy to levitate. Either way, being able to fly would be awesome. I don't think I would join a circus if I had that power. There's probably more productive things you could do with that. Just saying. Case also file 1461. The cryptozoological mystery. So many sightings these days of beasts and creatures where they just don't belong. They're navigating into areas that they shouldn't be in. Even if they're normal animals, it makes you wonder, what is the fundamental change that is happening to our planet? Is it climate change? Is it the realigning of the magnetic field? I don't know, but something's going on. Do you feel it too? It's some kind of planetary shift. Case notes of file 1462. My reincarnated skirt. Yeah, this is a proper universal return. And it's curious that you don't actually need a DOP event, a disappearing object phenomena, to get the item back. Now there's ideas that maybe they just come from other parallel universes. They're not creating mass. The universe isn't creating mass from thin air, it's just borrowing it or stealing it from a different universe. But it's weird. I mean, there's no other way to say it, because why would the specific skirt of anything that could possibly be transported over be transported over? It's like someone was listening and knowing that you wanted it. There is a mind at play, or maybe an AI of some kind. Okay, so it's for the bonus file. The Midnight Visitor. Yeah, this harkens back again to sleep paralysis, and the things we see when we're just coming out of the dreamlike state, they aren't always, sometimes maybe, but they aren't always just figments or creations of our own mind. When they're physically interacting with the real world, well, clearly in that case, they're not just fiction, created by our cerebral processes, no. They really are there, not of the material world, but capable of phasing through, or at least interacting with us, in that dreamlike state, just coming out of it. There's a transition process that happens somewhat slowly, sometimes. Sometimes you'll wake up perfectly fine, you go to bed, blink, and then it's morning, and there's no transition process. But I think the deeper your sleep, and being awoken from that deep REM sleep, that's when things can break apart. And then you can see things that you're not meant to see. And now time for the joke of the day. A blind man walks into a bar, and a table, and a chair. It kind of sucks to be blind. You have to have one of those sticks that you just navigate in front of you to not, walk into a bar or a table or a chair. Yeah. I am thankful I'm not blind. Even though my eyesight isn't great, I can still see without glasses. What are you thankful for? Case also file 1463. An encounter with the Top Hat Man. There's multiple cases now reporting this Top Hat Man sighting, either in a dreamlike state, coming out of sleep paralysis, or just in the open world. Out of the corner of their eye, a disfigured face, a top hat that's protecting something, and usually well dressed in a suit. But maybe it's not really there, maybe it's more of an apparition, an entity that is possessing your own mind, and channeling it to create this element or totem of fear, because that is what is reported, fear. Also, another thing I find interesting is the idea of using prayer as mind orientation, to use your own soul as like a protective shield or barrier in the surrounding environment. So this Top Hat Man might be there, but can't directly interact with you because you're protected. But he can still show himself to create fear, if that was the intent. Case also file 1464. A UFO's gyroscopic dance. This is the first instance I've read of a gyroscopic movement from a UFO. And it's an interesting phenomenon if you look at various physics demonstrations where if you have something that's spinning and you spin it at the right angle, then it'll conserve its own momentum, so it can actually spin counter to gravity. And that makes you wonder if there's some way to use that physical property to cancel out gravity, if you spin something fast enough. But to my understanding, that doesn't actually work. But maybe we're missing something. It's pretty cool. If that's how we attain anti-gravity, whatever the way, that would be awesome. Just broaden your mind to the possibilities, right? Who knows where technology is going to be in even 5 years or 10 years or 100, a century from now. You can't even imagine. Case also file 1465. Overnight, my expensive contacts spawned a twin. But this is weird actually, because it happens so often to you. So something is looking out for you, I guess, trying to give you extra stuff. Stealing it, robbing it from other alternate universes. And the users in those universes are losing out. Makes you wonder. I think there's only one true soul. Maybe those other versions of us are just computer approximations. They look at us, the real soul, and say, okay, well this is what he's doing, so let's extrapolate that to all the other copies, and they're going to go about their life generally in that method, really, that mannerism. But then there's some small tweaks, and those small tweaks and changes that the simulation doesn't get right produces all these variations. If you have a guardian angel, for instance, that can move objects from one universe to another, just spitballing here, maybe it's the real you, the one with the soul, and all the others don't really matter because they're just NPCs. Now maybe this isn't true, maybe every copy does have a soul, maybe it's almost partitioned, where you are all the other copies at the same time and you just don't realize it, you're only consciously aware of one. I don't know, I'm getting lost in my own thoughts here. But another thing that is bothering me is the increase in frequency of all these DOP events, these animals that shouldn't be where they are, and so on. And of course, the infamous black dot that we haven't heard of in quite a while, so that's a positive, but still. Is this an unstable universe? Increasing in instability? Or is it just reporting bias? So more people have access to the internet, and so because of that, there's just more stories. Maybe the latter. It's kind of like the increase in autism. Is it really something going on, or is it just better testing, more frequent testing, so on? Maybe it's a combination of both. I think it might be that. I think there is definitely a case where there's just more people that are able to report their weird events, but also things aren't entirely as stable as they were, say, 30 years ago. That's just my gut feeling, though. And now time for the quote of the day. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. Carl Sagan. You know, this quote reminds me of the scene in The Matrix. I believe it's the second Matrix, or maybe the third one. Anyways, there's this old man, he's on the council. I forgot his name, but he's talking to Neo in the real world in Zion, in the bowels of the city where all the machines are operating and keeping everyone alive. But he says that no one really knows even how they work. It's almost like magic. And I suppose if you don't understand something, but it works, is that not magic? Until you understand it, and then the magic is lost. But you gain power. So, would you rather have the magic, or would you rather have the power? Question suivante, 1466. 29 crickets lost in a parallel universe. So yes, DOP can occur even to living entities, and maybe it does mesh with having a soul or not having a soul. Maybe insects don't have souls. That is an interesting question. Where is the cutoff point? Does a virus have a soul? Bacteria? Single-celled organisms? I don't think so. Do animals? Probably. Human beings definitely, at least most of them. But then yeah, what about an insect? What about a cricket? Does a cricket have a soul? That is such an interesting question, and of course it's not really possible to answer it. It's just assumptions. We know they're intelligent, but intelligence in and of itself doesn't mean you have a soul. That could be computer generated. So it does make you wonder, maybe free will, the ability to make choices outside of your programming, is an indication that you have a soul. If you go and take actions contrary to that programming, yeah, you probably have some force, some will, some power, some energy that is within you that is able to power through what you're supposed to be doing, or supposed to be doing. But yeah, I would have gone mad, knowing that there were so many crickets in a bag and then they're all gone. That is one of the more overt kinds of DOP, especially when you have witness and it happened again in the shop when you went back in. Mind blown. Question suivante, 1467. The melody of goodbye. So I honestly think the music is a binding factor, a binding agent that can connect people together. And there is some truth to that. There's olfactory senses where smell, but also sound can play a great role in memory. And of course, we know each other mainly through memory. So if you want to remember something or someone, a song is perfect for that. Or it can be more literal, like a song talking about the afterlife, something like that. But yes, it's a beautiful way, if you die, and you have some method to control music that's playing next, to let them know that you're still around, or at least we're temporarily still around. Maybe they go into the white light after that, I don't know, but it's like the true love of the universe is the vibration of the atoms in the atmosphere that we need to live. Without the air, we have nothing. Question suivante, 1468. That's not Venus. There are a lot of Venus-looking UFO sightings, and a few of them that I haven't read on the channel, but the initial factor is that it moves in the sky and then it becomes stationary. Of course, Venus wouldn't do that, or the movement would actually be quite slow, even though it would be persistent and very consistent. So you have a case here where there is definitely an object up there. Doesn't mean it's alien. It could just be some unknown plane or object that, again, I agree, I don't think it's a balloon. But yeah, it definitely could be some sort of aircraft that we're testing, that the military is testing. Or it could even be some kind of blimp. I think those, if you have a certain turbine fans on it, can actually become stationary. So that's a possibility too. Question suivante, 1469. The house that ate my phone. So this is weird because the phone case returned. It's almost like something was trying to return the whole thing, but it was only able to manage the case. A partial DOP returned. Or it's almost like if you had the case where a skirt returned, the jean skirt. What if only half of it came back? Does it have to be the full thing? I guess not. But usually it is, almost always. In fact, I think this is the first time a DOP event returned the object and it was only partial. Very odd. Some mistake in that. There's almost like a DOP return and then DOP partial DOP again. I don't know, it's a jumbled mess in this one. And now time for the quote of the day. Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence. True friendship is a plant of slow growth, and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to the appellation. George Washington. So I'm a big believer in that who we allow to be in our lives, to be close to us. Again, I agree, be courteous to everyone, unless they've given you a reason not to be, but that should be the default stance. But in terms of intimate relationships, close friends or loved ones, never feel obliged to be with someone that isn't a match for you. Maybe they're not even bad people, they just don't mesh with your personality and what you want from life. In that case, move on. But also, understand that it can take time. Give it a lot of chances. The seed grows very slowly and often does have to be tested. But if it turns out that it's not the correct plant for you, that's okay. Move on, find one that is for you. Because if not, they'll be siphoning your energy forever. Case notes for file 1470. We stumbled into a town that doesn't exist. The chase scene, as you describe it with the white van, kind of feels like some sort of government agent. So was this a town that was being tested for nukes? In Virginia? I don't think so. I agree with you there. But it does seem like it probably is some military testing site. If you want to hear something truly terrifying, the military has active drills to test combat scenarios against civilian populations, and I guess this would be one of those towns, where they actively build a town that looks just like any other town and send in military on drills, various drills, to quell an uprising or whatever they want to justify it as. That's more terrifying than any horror story I've read. That said, the inexplicable GPS malfunction, well, is it inexplicable? I'm not sure, but it is a wrinkle. Maybe the military has some sort of technology that is jamming the signal? I could see that. Case notes for file 1471. The Wendy's drive-thru mystery. So a kind of universal intersection, but only relevant for the debit card. Nothing else was different. What I want to know is, was the card charged? Because she handed it back to you, presumably the Apple Pay wasn't used. Or were both charged? That would answer a lot of questions, but in the meantime, all I can say is, the Baconator is pretty good. And now time for the fact of the day. It takes 10 to the 8th atoms laid in a row to span the width of a human fingernail, 1 centimeter. There's an interesting thought experiment, or just another fact I guess you could say, where we as human beings, our size, is relatively in the middle between the largest possible thing, or the grandest scope of the observable universe, and the smallest possible thing, the Planck length. But if you're just talking about atoms, even those are so mind-bogglingly small, it's hard to visualize. I mean, take this example. Even if you're just trying to quantify how many atoms are in your own body, or how many atoms are in each breath that you inhale and exhale. It's too many, it's such a large number that it doesn't even make sense. And so, in that way, you can feel big. And then if you think about the size and scope of the observable universe, then you feel small. But in reality, it's all relative. So don't feel big, don't feel small, just feel like yourself. Case notes are file 1472. The woman named Aurora. This is almost like Cupid mythology, where you could have a guardian angel that is trying to set you up. I don't think this woman herself had anything to do with saving you. And again, she was oblivious to even having called you, but it was from her number. So I think the guardian angel looking over you is sort of like a Cupid agent as well. Maybe for some reason you are destined or supposed to be with this woman, and it wasn't happening organically in this universe. So measures were taken to make sure it does. It's kind of like an arranged dating service, but on a meta level. I don't know how I feel about that. Case also file 1473. How King Crimson brought back Bob. So we can rule out coincidence, of course. My guess is Bob has some sort of psychic connection to you, psychic powers if you will, and he's not even aware of it. So by his mere presence of approaching the house with the goal in mind to retrieve the CD, it instilled in you the desire to go and clean stuff out and find the CD. In a certain sense, Bob had a domino field set up and he pushed on the first one without even realizing it. I think. Now maybe he's some super mastermind villain that is in full control of his powers, but I doubt that. That would be an interesting story to read one day. Bonus notes. 2 sisters, 2 homes, 1 unsettling night. So this is weird enough on its own, if it only happened to you. But combined, how do you make any sense of that? There's some kind of essence that is tethered to both of you. And whatever affects you affects her as well, even 50 miles away. It's sort of like spiritual quantum entanglement. And now time for the fact of the day. Time is relative. When you look up at the stars, you're reading messages in a bottle. And that information, it might not be deliberately crafted for us to understand or read, but it's still there, and read it we shall. The universe is a grand tapestry of ancient fossilized records, and it's up to us to appreciate it, because as far as we know, no one else can. Question 1474. The Ring in real life. The Ring is an excellent, creepy style movie as a teenager, but going back and watching it again, I don't know, I didn't get the same vibe. I don't know if anyone else has done that. I guess it applies for a lot of movies that you see as a teenager or as a child. You go back and rewatch it and it just doesn't hit the same way. Your mind's different, so it makes sense. You are not the same person you were back then. Specifically to this glitch, my guess is the human body, some electrical fields generated by it can affect electronics. If you want to call it our aura or our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it, some people, they simply pass by electronics and it messes with them. Streetlights, TVs, radios, cell phones, their mere presence produces an electrical charge in the air. Now, this range is limited, so it doesn't affect everything, in their entire city. It's almost like having an allergy and not even realizing it, and you keep eating the same foods. Well, you have to take steps to guard against this. I'm not sure exactly what you would do. Wrap yourself in tinfoil? Not to protect yourself, but to protect others. Case notes are file 1475. A dog, a full moon, and a shared bowl of popcorn. I think this is as simple as kind of spiritual walking, spiritual astral projection while dreaming. You access your sister's life, even if it was more jumbled and interpreted by your brain, and then you saw it in your dreamlike state. You never physically went there, of course, but you didn't have to. And to my knowledge, this isn't even really outside the realm of normality. Even the CIA has conducted tests to verify that remote viewing is a thing. And if remote viewing is a thing, well, how could that be? I mean, you would have to be using your soul to stay in the physical realm. Your body's still there, but your soul is miles away. 450 in this case. Case notes for file 1476. The impossibly silent store. This I'll call the limbo scene, where you are trapped in a universe that is a facsimile. Like in The Matrix, where to load up things that are necessary, like an armory, or a training program fighting against Morpheus, you're creating a fake world, if you will. And there's no other people there, or probably no one else. Maybe a couple handful that are in transition as well, but that's just hypothesis. It might just be created individually for each person making a long transition between universes. So you're stuck in limbo. Everything there is real in a physical sense, but it's a facsimile. It's not real in the same sense that it's only real in the effect that it can have an impact on other human beings, other sentient beings with souls. And so in that respect, it's not real. Also, I wonder, if a soul transition happens, can this create an electronic interference? My guess is yes, and that could explain why the phone was all jumbled out, even on the other end in the new universe. It was being prepared to receive a new soul. And now time for the poem of the day. In the tapestry of love, a complex design, a dance of hearts, a rhythm so fine. Yet difficulties arise, like storms above, testing the strength of this thing called love. In the garden of passion, blooms desire, but thorns of doubt can fuel love's fire. Communication falters, like a broken dove, navigating the maze, the challenge of love. Misunderstandings, like shadows, creep. Silent whispers, secrets to keep. Emotions entangled, like hands in a glove. Oh, the intricate puzzle, the struggle of love. Trust, a fragile bridge, spans the divide. A delicate balance on which we stride. Mistakes like thunder echo from above, A turbulent journey, the battlefield of love. Time, a healer, yet a relentless thief, stealing moments, causing joy and grief. Patience, a virtue, a gift from above, an elusive virtue in the tempest of love. Yet through the tempest, stars still gleam, a testament to love's resilient dream. For in the heart's embrace we find a trove, a treasure worth the difficulties of love. So let us navigate the intricacies of the sea, with open hearts and empathy. For in overcoming trials we rise above, a testament to the enduring power of love. And what about you? Do you have someone in your life that you love? Even if it isn't romantic, a good close friend, or even your parents. Anyone. Case notes of file 1477. The Mercedes that vanished with the storm. This seems like the universe can be a sleight of hand master. It's like a magic trick. Look one way, and then in the next moment, Schrodinger's cat kicks in, and the car is gone. I think it's a kind of trick the universe is playing on us. Not malicious, but trickery. Case notes file 1478. How my debit card defied time and space. Again, it's like Schrodinger's cat. You both existed back home after returning and didn't. But until you opened the door in this reality, it wasn't solidified. So the door was out of sight, and the debit card and the receipt it was wrapped in were inside and weren't. It all depends on perspective and if the waveform has collapsed. If no one is in there, what just didn't collapse? And I think it's more to do with soul perception. So, a lot of things can interact with matter, but not necessarily collapse the waveform. It's like the question, does a tree make a sound in the forest if no one else is around to hear it? Probably not. I don't think the universe even renders it in that case. Case notes of file 1479. The Clementine that broke the universe. So quite simply, this is the best kind of glitch. The kind of glitch where food is reproduced. Maybe stolen from other universes, and the me's in those universes won't have it, but I'm okay with that. Screw them. If I get over there, I'll be unhappy. Or I guess I won't, because I won't it'll already have passed and happened, so who cares? I guess, though, it means that they can steal from me in this universe, so, maybe I shouldn't, but Subway's too tempting. If I order 3 footlongs, which is a standard affair for me, good little snack, I would love to get 4, or even 6. Boy, that'd be a dream. The great universal heists. And now time for the quote of the day. Anger is a puppeteer that makes your mouth work faster than your mind. Evan S.R. We've all been there before, right? When we're in a fight with someone, or just an argument that gets heated, and then we realize, oh, I just said something I don't actually mean. The problem is then, typically ego takes over, pride, and you can't admit that what you said was incorrect, it's not really what you meant. Maybe after the fact, but never in the moment, right? Very difficult to say in the moment. Well, the fight is still going on, and you said something mean, so they say something mean back, and fire begets fire, right? Violence begets violence. Applies to anything. Fighting fire with fire generally doesn't work well. Same thing with anger. Fighting anger with anger doesn't work well. And I'm not saying that you're a bad person if you do it, because we're all human. No one's perfect, right? I'm certainly not. It bears saying that we should try to be. Even though we can never measure up to perfection, we should still aim to. Shoot for the stars. Be happy for the moon. Keisonsofa 1480. When Percocet and Neo collide, do VHS normally loop? I can't remember. I know I used to watch movies all the time on VHS. I remember the first one I think was, what was it called? It's the one with cartoon elephants. Damn, I wish I could remember. I forgot completely, but I'm sure people will know what I'm talking about. It was pretty common back then in the 90s. Anyways, I don't think they automatically rewind. Maybe there's a setting on some VHS players that can enable that. Anyways, I don't think that's a glitch. I think waking up in the exact moment that you fell asleep is pretty strange, though. It could all be just a weird coincidence. I could buy that for this one. But it is also interesting that it happens in the original concept of the glitch in the Matrix with the black cat, déjà vu. Case notes for file 1481. Toronto's weird monkey mystery. So was this a fatherly mega prank? The biggest prank in the universe? Your father found the monkey toy that you both had savagely destroyed? Or mangled after the fact? And he didn't tell you, and he kept it secret in his back pocket, proverbially speaking, and then dropped it on you when he knew you were going to go to Toronto, in an area that he knew you'd travel in. So if that was a prank, I have to say, props to the dad. But I'm not convinced. That seems too much. Even I wouldn't go that far. Even if I was a spirit, I wouldn't go that far. And again, there's no payoff. That would only work if I did something that crazy. I would have to tell them, eventually, after a day or two at least. But the fact that didn't happen, well, some will is involved, but this seems too specific. And it's weird because it doesn't really seem like a prank either if there was an extra dimensional will involved. But why return it at all? I'm stumped on this one. Case also file 1482, the red lights that never existed. I would qualify this as a real-life Twilight Zone level glitch. And most glitches are pretty small relative to this one. Plus, this also qualifies as the quack standard because there's another person that simultaneously notices the glitch. Right there with you. How would you react if that happened? You're just at a light, everything's normal, you see the physical light there. Not just the light emanating towards you from the actual bulb, but actually the whole thing. The pole itself, rising from the ground. And then one moment you look away, and the next, it's just gone. And you have a witness with you. That is so extraordinary, it's mind-boggling. I don't know how I would react to anything like that. The glitches I've experienced, so tiny, losing a tennis ball, you can still, in the back of your mind, just say, okay, well, it bounced away, found a hole in the wall, and just went down below or something. It doesn't make sense, but you can rationalize it away. But there's no way to rationalize this. This is a glitch in the Matrix. Point blank, no one can deny that. If anyone can deny this one, then I don't know. Case file 1483. My teenage nightmare folded into reality. I would say probably a guardian angel influencing your dreams, guiding you towards a specific future, from the quantum time foam, you could say. Visualizing the time foam. It's like visualizing the multiverse. There's different possibilities, and they all are real, but you only get to experience one of them, consciously. At any rate, I think the homeless man was actually a guardian angel, or a human being possessed by your guardian angel, to try to reinforce what was happening. He needed to give you that context, so you knew. Because you were going to rush out, right? But then, because it was so similar to your dream, you didn't. And the woman behind the SUV didn't kill you. So you saved her conscious, and you saved yourself, of course. Even though, yeah, you would have gone to a different universe from quantum immortality. In fact, I think saving the woman from the guilt of having killed someone is probably the biggest takeaway from this. And yes, she should not have been driving carelessly on her phone or whatever. That's true and wrong. But I think the guilt of killing someone is just too much. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And now time for the joke of the day. Dad is listening to his daughter say her prayers before bedtime. She says, "God bless Mommy and God bless Daddy and God bless Grandma and goodbye, Grandpa." He asks her, "Why did you say that?" "I don't know, I just felt like saying it." The next day, Grandpa drops dead. Wow, thinks Dad. That's an odd coincidence. A month later at bedtime, the daughter says, "God bless Mommy and Daddy, and goodbye, Grandma." Sure enough, the next day, Grandma breathes her last earthly breath. The dad realizes this is more than a coincidence, but he is not sure what to do. He doesn't want to disturb his wife by telling her. Grandma and Grandpa were her parents. Months go by, and one night, the man is listening to his daughter saying her prayers at bedtime. "God bless Mommy." She turns her head and looks straight at him. "And goodbye, Daddy." "What? Are you sure, honey?" She nods. The man's heart begins racing, and he breaks out in a sweat. He is so upset, he can't sleep at all that night. The next day, he goes off to work, but locks himself in his office. He takes the phone off the hook, cancels all his meetings, and awaits the inevitable. He stays at work past 5, because he feels secure there. He watches the hours tick by. Finally, it is midnight, and drenched in sweat, he realizes he has cheated death. He drives home, drenched in sweat, and with all his nerves frazzled. His wife is up and waiting for him. "Where the hell have you been today?" He replies, "Don't shout, I've had an absolutely miserable day." His wife then says, "You had a miserable day? I'm the one who had a miserable day. First, the milkman drops dead on the steps." Oh. Dad did die, but he wasn't the father. Oh my god. That's a good one. That was a long joke, but I liked it. The mother was playing the field. Maybe she didn't even know either. Question sur file 1484. A man's odyssey through parallel lives. Ah yes, so this is the type of story and experience really that parallels so well to sci-fi too. So of course I'm thinking of TNG's Inner Light. I've mentioned it a few times on this channel because stories like this keep popping up. Perhaps again, it's one of those things where sci-fi borrows from real life. So these stories aren't just suddenly happening, where people wake up or visit a closet, which is a very strange detail to this story that I haven't heard before, but often people will go to bed and enter a dreamlike state that becomes more and more lucid, but they can't wake from it. And eventually, even if it's days, weeks, months, years, that fiction, you could call it, becomes their real life. They never see it happening in the moment. It's very gradual, piece by piece, until they are completely consumed by the new life and their old life has been suppressed. Now, what is real? What is fake? Ask Morpheus. I don't know. Was this a simulation malfunction? Did you hop to a different world, but in a transient sense where your soul was zigzagging between them back and forth? Maybe. Maybe this was actually just happening in your mind. It wasn't a glitch in the matrix itself, more a glitch in your own brain. But if that's the case, it does happen to other people relatively frequently in terms of how often we can get these stories. Of course, if you're talking about how often this happens to the general scope of the entire planet, it's very rare. Certainly, I've never experienced anything like that. I've had somewhat relatively lucid dreams, but even then, not really. Nothing even 0.001% of this. Have you ever had a dream similar to that? Maybe some people experience a single day. I've had more stories like that too, where they experience a single day, it feels so real, and then they wake up. Maybe it describes the future day, or a day that will come in a few weeks or months, or even a year or so down the road. I've had a story like that too. But yeah, needless to say, stories like this are incredibly fascinating because it appeals to our nature to experience something else, different. The grass is always greener, right? Of course, that's not always true, is it? It's more individual pieces of a different life that might be better, like in this case, your other self's bank account. Yeah, shame that didn't transfer over. And now time for the quote of the day. Poets have been mysteriously silent on the subject of cheese. J.K. Chesterton. Well, I have a very specific and simple reason for that, because poets are in touch with feelings, and often in touch with ethics very well, philosophers as well. And they're all very well aware that cheese is of the devil. No, seriously, why do people like it? I will never understand that. Question sur file 1485. Writing from the unknown. So let's be honest here. Cats do have special powers. Intellect from the deep dark void, you could say. And they do know what they like. So was this cat somehow mimicking your own handwriting? I wouldn't go that far. In fact, the only thing I can think of is that you somehow sleep wrote this because you remembered buying it and the cat liked it before. It's very strange. Maybe a guardian angel somehow looking out for your cat. Do cats have guardian angels? Well, that's a question. Question sur file 1486. Did we witness a space-time slip in the park? This is a story that I could believe is some elaborate prank. Mainly because it's not about revealing it to the person that is pranked. It's about Instagram and TikTok clout, where people are doing that these days. They're twisting people's minds, but never even telling them about it. No, they just go on about their day. I like those kinds of pranks when the person being pranked is told. Otherwise, you're just messing with their brain for views, which is kinda mean, isn't it? Mess with their mind a bit, but then make sure they know your mind's okay. Now, if it is a man stuck out of time or out of phase with this universe, that's also possible. We have all kinds of parallel universe visits that are transient, and people get confused when coming over initially. It is almost like being out of phase with the universe you're in now, because you're not from it. And now time for the quote of the day. What some people mistake for the high cost of living is really the cost of high living. Doug Larson. Okay, so I think there's truth to both sides in that, yes, the cost of living is rising pretty quickly because of inflation, the Federal Reserve, there's so much more currency in the economy now. You can see the chart of the M2 money supply on the Federal Reserve website. St. Louis, I believe. Anyways, you can see it spike up. Now, part of that I think is because of how they started counting it, but there's still a dramatic increase, even in the last 5 years, especially after the pandemic and all that. Whatever your thoughts are on that, it's very clear that there was a lot of money printed or digitally created and infused into the economy. And when you have a bunch of money, new currency imprinted like that, minted, well, if people use it, then prices will rise. Now, sometimes there's a delay because people don't immediately use it. And when it's created, sometimes it stays in the stock market and investment and all that. Banks use it first. Whoever uses it first gets the full value of it. Then it trickles out to everyone else eventually. And then prices rise, especially things that people use a lot, like rent and utilities, food, all that kind of stuff, gas, insurance, etc. At any rate, not to get too boring with the dry economics, needless to say, prices are rising, but also, there are ways to mitigate that. If you live more simply, make your food at home. If you go out to McDonald's or Uber Eats, your bill for food is going to be astronomical. But if you eat at home, it's not so bad, especially if you eat mostly whole foods. Get lots of potatoes, rice, beans. If you're going to eat meat, try to eat infrequent and get the good quality stuff. Now, that is more expensive, but it's better for you. It's better for the animals too, so there's that. There are steps to take, and I wouldn't say it's exactly high living, but yeah, it's all about relativity, right? Relative to what we're used to, it's normal living. But say relative to 50 years ago, 70 years ago, no, it's even modest living today is high living compared to back then. I've seen this Amazon pod that you can buy, a home for $20,000 that ships in a giant, almost like cargo container. But it is a real home, and it actually unfolds out into like, I don't know, I think it was 300 or 400 square foot. So if you buy rural land for $20,000 for an acre, you can probably get cheaper than that. Then the home, then get a compost toilet, some wood, chop down your own firewood, get some solar panels, batteries. For $50,000 clear, you have your own home paid off, no mortgage, nothing. And yeah, it's not luxury, but you have your own base of operations that no one can take from you. Isn't that the dream? And you can build on it over time. So you don't have to start in a conventional home that's $300,000, $400,000 now. No, think smaller and think in incremental steps. You don't have to do a giant home initially. Case on file 1487. This stranger speaks my life events word for word. Yeah, that is quite something, and it's pretty clear that it was you. There's no other way someone could know all those intimate details that you never even told anyone else to. So this was you, and I guess it was you from the future. Which begs the question, are you seeing yourself as you will be, no matter what, or are you just seeing a version of your future self? My guess is, it's the latter. And maybe that's just my own bias, because if it is a predetermined future, then free will is a lie. Or at least, we have no control over it now as we're experiencing it. Maybe we chose it before and now we're reliving some sort of replay. I used to talk about that a lot. It's still a compelling theory if there is only one future. But I don't think there is just one. I think it's a bubbling foam of quantum future possibilities. And that's how the multiverse even works, is every possible action or consequence of an action splits off into a different universe because there's multiple branching paths for every single one, which is why there are so many different universes it's impossible to even comprehend. At any rate, this was your future self, in my opinion, but it's only one version of it. So you still get to pick which one you're going to be. Now, if you end up being the same one, pay attention. Try to pinpoint exactly when you go there. Of course, the problem is, now you know. So will you even make the choice to go to that park and speak to the person, whoever it was you were talking to? A friend from the future, perhaps. You can always choose otherwise, because you already know it. It is like in sci-fi, where there's those scenes where people see the future and they have no way to change it. It still happens to them, even after seeing it. I don't believe in that. I think even if there's one future, if you go back to the past and show that to the person, they're going to make different choices just by consequence of seeing it. That information has power to affect the future. So in that case, there'd be two futures. But no, I think we live in a quantum foam of probable, possible futures, and there's so many, there's no way to predict it. So live your best life and enjoy it. Case notes file 1488. Amazon is busting into the glitch business? I think that's unironically correct. The universe did want you to have those rings, maybe as future gifts. When the universe returns an item, I don't think it's always intentional. But I think sometimes guardian angel, simulation, developer, whatever you want to call it, God, an angel, I don't know who it is, what it is, but I think there is sometimes a will involved. And when it's very specific items like this, I think there is a purpose that we just can't see yet. If you go way into the deep future, at least in multiple possible versions of those futures, then having these rings for some reason is going to benefit you. And if you don't, maybe those futures just aren't as pleasant for you. So someone is looking out for you in ways that you can't even imagine yet. So hold on to the rings. I think they will become important later on. It's almost like a quest item in an MMORPG where you need to keep those items for a future event. And it's just in this case, you don't even know what the quest is yet. You'll get it later on. Okay, so notes for the creepy file. The Home Alone Nightmare. Okay, so simple point here. I think this is why traps should be legal. Salt traps too for spirits. So in case this was the spirit of your boyfriend coming home, he didn't know your name. So that is a slightly potentially supernatural aspect to the story. Now it is possible to know the name of someone who lives there, so he could have looked it up, known you, stalked you. That's even creepier. But if it was some sort of forward soul projection, well, I mean, it is also possible that your boyfriend was pranking you. I don't think he would go that far. It's pretty cruel to do that and not tell them, but that is a notable possibility. Either way, whatever the answer, you'll never know, most likely, and the best thing to do is just take steps to defend your own home. There are multiple things you can buy that will lock the door from inside, beyond just a normal lock on the door. So even if someone has a key, they can't get in. Very good if you're going to hotels or in a new apartment, because you don't know who has the key from before. They don't typically change those locks after every single new tenant. So keep that in mind. Just buy, on Amazon, there's multiple items. You can get door jams, you can get a barricade jam, you can get a thing that just attaches into the door. Now, some of these might not actually prevent someone that is brute forcing their way in, but it will alert you. If someone has a key or they're picking the lock, they won't be able to get in. They'll have to brute force their way in, and there's some things you can buy that'll prevent even that, at least for a good while. Just take steps so you can feel safe in your home, because everyone should feel safe in their castle, I think. And now time for the joke of the day. Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts. They spilled out a long time ago, didn't they? And the worst thing about being a skeleton is you can't enjoy food anymore. Although I guess if you still have a tongue, if you're one of those skeletons that isn't fully dissolved yet, that'd be the best of both worlds, because you can't get fat, you can't digest the food, but you can still taste it. That's what I want to be. Maybe that's weird. Case notes of 1489. Torrential rain to bright and sunny in the blink of an eye. The most classic example of a folded reality experience. Of course, this is still the quack standard, with two witnesses seeing the same thing at the same time. No one influencing each other, both just terrified. Han, I'm scared. Well, yes, but you're gonna be okay, as you know now. But man, living through that in the moment. It's like those instances where the sun just momentarily blinks out. It's something that happens, and it's over pretty quickly. In this case, a bit longer than the sun blinking out, but still. In our everyday lives, the universe, reality, is completely perfect. There's never a single thing wrong with it. Gravity always moves at 9.8 meters per second on an object. Air resistance always works, planes fly as they should. In very rare instances, there are cases that just break the laws of physics, break the laws of reality as we are intuitively experiencing them. And that will be jarring even if you know about glitches, but if you don't know about glitches, my god. This kind of stuff will just blow your mind apart. Especially if you have a witness. The danger is when it happens to you alone and then you start to doubt your own sanity. I don't wish that on anyone, so try to hang out with more people, I guess. That's the solution to that. If you have someone else there that can corroborate your experience, well, at least you won't feel crazy. Then you'll just know that reality isn't what it seems to be, even though it's very good at hiding that fact. Keisotsu file 1490, The Day Time Stood Still, A Survivor's Tale. So I'll label this a lost experience. If you know the show, you'll understand. I won't spoil anything in case you've never seen it. Anyways, it is clear that the perception of time can be altered if you simply increase the frequency of your brain or decrease it. So if your brain is processing information faster, then you're going to perceive time as slower because there's more things happening. Whereas if your brain is processing information slower, then you're going to perceive less events and then time will appear to be going faster for you. It's almost like frame rate in a video game. If you increase it, there's just more information coming in. It's a smoother experience, but time can be altered in a certain way just by altering your own brain chemistry. So if this was a guardian angel, he was directly influencing your own perception of time in a way that you can't even really describe because it's still 1 second per second. The universe hasn't changed. You're not on a spaceship going too fast and you're curving through time. No, this was all about perception, manipulated by something that wanted to save you. And apparently wanted to save a whole bunch of people because no one else was in the middle cart. That's incredible. Maybe a whole bunch of guardian angels got together to prevent this. But then if that's the case, you have to ask, why did they prevent this accident, this tragedy, but not others? People die of tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, all kinds of natural disasters that apparently they don't have to. So who is making these choices for us and why? And now time for the quote of the day. Fear is the main source of superstition and one of the main sources of cruelty. To conquer fear is the beginning of wisdom. Bertrand Russell. Fear is the grand enemy. If something can destroy you, destroy your body, but can't instill fear in you, then they never truly trapped you. They never truly destroyed you. It's like in George Orwell's 1984. The whole premise of that book, it's revealed the purpose isn't to kill someone. Killing someone is easy. But to truly conquer them, to control them, to eviscerate their self, you have to instill enough fear that they will break their own principles. And if you can accomplish that, then you truly own them. You don't need chains, you don't need threats, you just need to break them. Diminish them to the point that they have no self-identity, at least that they can believe. You cause them to break it. In effect, you can cause people to break themselves. And fear is so powerful. Even if you haven't broken the person, you can still control them on the surface level. If they dig deep enough, they can overcome it, but most people aren't going to do that. So fear just on its own is incredibly powerful. So if you're afraid of something, examine the source of that fear and say, well, is someone trying to control me with this? That's a good question to ask, I'd say. Keisotsu file 1491. The mysterious return of the skeleton key. Okay, so yeah, why in that moment? You were vacuuming the carpet. Now, the vacuums I've had were never powerful enough to suck up a key, but you would still hear it jingle. You would hear it as the vacuum passed over it. That's undeniable. You would know a key was there if it was, even if it wasn't sucked directly into the vacuum. So indeed, it wasn't there, and then it was. Someone put it there. For a dresser. I mean, this harkens back to the incident where someone sent their jewelry back to Amazon and then it just reappeared to them. It didn't fit, so it wasn't for them. This key is going to somehow play an important role in your life in the future. It's fun to speculate on how, but honestly, I guess that's impossible to know. Keep your quest item. Keep it close, and don't lose it this time. Keisotsu file 1492. My toddler's fall defies the laws of physics. One thing I've been wondering is, we know that the laws of physics include quantum immortality. I have seen sufficient evidence to be compelled to believe that. Maybe we're wrong, but as far as I understand, that's a fact of nature. So, given that, what I want to know is, does quantum immortality only happen if your physical body dies? What about if there's enough trauma to your soul, to the memories of the body that are impacting the soul? In this case, a honest, unavoidable mistake leads to the death of your child, and that trauma completely destroys you. Now, your physical body is still alive and well, but your mental state is gone. You become loopy. Can the soul jump bodies at that point? I think that's possible. And I think it would explain why some people become almost catatonic after incidents like this. That would explain it. The animating force of the soul fled because there was too much trauma, too much pain. This could have been a case of quantum immortality, where in the original universe, your son really did die from this fall. Or maybe didn't even die, but just was so injured that he was left catatonic as well. And so because of that, you blamed yourself, there was too much guilt, too much pain, and your soul fled to a different universe. I could see that being a case. I think if this is a simulation, for instance, maybe in the real world, you're made aware of that, and like you recheck the game, you reload from a save point almost, or just hop over to a different server. So that is just hypothesis though. The other possibility is that a guardian angel did intervene to protect your son, and of course, in this case, yourself as well. Yeah, one or the other. But I do think it makes some sense that quantum immortality could apply even if your body's still alive. Why not? If your body is alive but just unusable. And now time for the poem of the day. In the face of strife, we stand so tall. Adversity's challenge, we heed the call. Through trials and storms, we find our way, for strength is born on the darkest day. With each obstacle, a chance to grow, to rise above and let resilience show. Though shadows loom and doubts may creep, our spirit's flame we vow to keep. In the dance of life, amidst the fray, we navigate the rough and sway, for in the heart of every trial lies the seed of our survival. So let adversity be our guide, to push beyond, to reach inside, for in the struggle we find our might, and emerge from darkness into the light. We grow through pain, we grow through adversity, we grow through challenge, we go through weights being put on our back, not always voluntarily. But I think the best weights are those we put on ourselves, that we choose to bear, and then we press on, and we grow and we level up as a result. Now, sometimes the weight will just crush you, like in the story I just read. It's that old saying again, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's not always true, but I think it's a good general quote. Case Answer File 1493, Unraveling the Mystery of the Neon Man. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what was the source of the argument? What were they arguing about? To me, it strikes as not wanting the authorities involved, so it could just be a case where this neon man could have been a drug dealer or a hitman or someone that is unscrupulous and on the outskirts of society, and the people he was talking to, that you later talked to as well, didn't want to reveal anything because they don't want to get in trouble. Now, if it wasn't that, it's probably some sort of universal shift. What you were seeing never actually happened in the universe you were in. Those glitches are relatively common, at least in terms of people who experience glitches. I don't think it happens all that often in a macro-level sense. Case Answer File 1494. The universe stole my cream soda. All it comes down to for me is that some force of will inexplicably wanted you to have 3 cream sodas. It just returned to you. And in my view, that can't be a coincidental random glitch in the Matrix. I think it's something that defies what we understand of the universe. So in that sense, it's a glitch, but it's not random. That's the thing. There are random glitches, and there are glitches that involve some sort of entity, some will, guardian angel, developer, god, angel, whatever you want to call it. Someone with sentience decided you're going to have 3. And that definitely gets the brain working hard, because why would someone with that much power over the natural world care if you have 2 or 3 cream sodas? Somehow having 3 was important for your life, which is very interesting. And now time for the quote of the day. Life is like playing a violin in public and learning the instrument as one goes on. Samuel Butler. And here's the bigger secret. No one really knows what they're doing. We're all kinda winging it, at least at first. You get a natural sense as you do something more and more, although for some things you just never develop a talent for, like dancing. I don't care how much I'll practice, I'll never be a great dancer. That's okay. It's not in the cards for everyone. But in short to say, if you suck at something, that's okay. You'll probably get better, and if you don't, that's still okay. Move on to the next thing. You'll suck at it to begin with and go from there. Have a bit of, maybe humility isn't the right word, but just have some fun with life. Don't take it too seriously. Case Answer File 1495. Twisted geometry of the underground levels. Right, this is isolated quantum uncertainty. When you're alone, weird things can happen. The transmutation process between different parallel universes can happen in a seamless format, and no one is around to account for your disappearance or vanishing. You're the only one to experience it. So for everyone else's frame of reference, maybe it never even happened. But for you, it certainly did. Your perspective is reality. I think that's a takeaway that you can get just from normal physics, is that there is no universal reality. Everything is in flux and dependent on your localized frame of reference. And they know this because of the speed of light. It is always the same speed in a vacuum, no matter your perspective. It doesn't matter how fast you're moving. For you, you're going to see light moving at the speed of light. 299,792,458 meters per second in a vacuum. Now, if the universe was objective for everyone at the same time, then people would see light moving at different rates depending on their own velocity, their own speed. But it's just not how it works. The universe itself, space-time itself, will contract and elongate depending on your own speed relative to someone else. To understand that, and that also means that there is no objective now for the whole universe. If you could zoom out at the scale of the universe, it wouldn't look like some clean, crisp object that's moving in unison with everything else in it. No, everything would be moving at different rates. It's so bizarre. But that's how the universe appears to work. And then if you think about that and extrapolate it to our real lives, even though frame of reference usually refers to the speed at which someone is moving through space-time. But maybe there's more to it than that. I know in that one regard, life is very weird, so who's to say how far that extends? I suppose it extends to the underground levels. Case notes file 1496. The Road, Purgatory, and Bright Eyes. Yeah, the last part, where the streetlight went off, that's pure confirmation. It couldn't be a prank, it couldn't be some elongated confusion, no. The light just turning off like that, and assuming this isn't a light that just automatically turns off and not in the presence of someone else, but then all the lights in the area would be like that, so you would notice that pretty quickly. And those are pretty uncommon anyways. So for me, this does confirm that there was a actual human sentience presence there. I don't think it's purgatory, or an intended place of emptiness and cold and death in a certain context. I think it's the remnant echo of your lost friend, who is probably tethered to Matt, who can't let him go. Maybe the more we think about someone who's dead, who passed away, the more they're bound to the earth, or a tiny fragment of them is anyways. Maybe it's for our own benefit, and for us to get closure. Our thoughts create a ethereal tether. It's an interesting concept. Case notes for the bonus file. Anxiety, Ace, and the Doll. You reach a point in life when you understand that cursed objects are simply infused with the energy of their previous host, their previous owner, usually. Although I guess it doesn't have to be their previous owner. But something that someone cared enough about to when they died, their soul infused into it. And maybe it doesn't even necessarily involve death. It's kind of like in Harry Potter where with the Horcruxes, but in this case you don't have to commit murder to infuse it in. And your soul is naturally eternal, so it's not for immortality, it's just something that can happen. Our aura, our energy, can transmute into an object. Now, if you're a good person, I don't think this object would be negative. It probably would make the area feel better. Maybe you have a pet that doesn't want to leave an area, and that's because there's an object there that is infused with a very positive soul. But if you get a very negative, dark soul, maybe some animals are able to sense that more than others. And I think we as human beings can sense it too, but it's sort of like the sense of smell. Different animals and different people will have different levels of the senses, and I think we all have it. It's just some people have it much more attuned and potent than others. The doll was infused with a very negative energy, a very negative person. Best to get rid of it. As you did. Good job. And now time for the quote of the day. I will never be an old man. To me, old age is always 15 years older than I am. Bernard M. Baruch. Well, there is the adage of age just being a number, and I think beyond a certain point where your brain is fully developed, maybe. Your body does age. There's various factors that contribute to that, the shrinking of telomeres, metabolic buildup of damage, and other things. In terms of the mindset, yeah. You always want to think, okay, I'll be old in 15 years from now. I'm 33 now, closing in on 34. I don't feel old, and to me, I'm not actually old, but in 15 years, could I say that the same way? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. It is exciting in a way. I think age extension technology, medicine, will rapidly develop. So it could be a point that people like my age now will be able to live forever, at least in a biological sense. I don't believe in magical immortality. That is to say, if you're shot or if some external force destroys your body, well, you're gonna die. No way around that. But in terms of aging and disease, maybe we'll figure out a way to deal with that curse. I hope so, because life is awesome, isn't it? Want to be around forever. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.